Welcome to episode 250 of Real Therapy, where we talk about how movies make us feel. I'm Donavon Thompson with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today we are joined by Dr. Bruce Hutchinson of UCA Film to talk Steven Spielberg's JAWS. Here we talk about its narrative structure, as well as some of its blocking techniques and overall impact on the film industry. This is Real Therapy, and you know what that means.
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch all the movie reels, cause it's Dan and Don in Real Therapy. It's real.
Hey Bruce, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing. Yep. Yep, doing. I'm really excited. I mean, first of all, everyone, this is episode 250 of Real Therapy. We had it doesn't feel as important to me as 241, but it's still important. And I'm really happy and glad that you come back again for us. I love that you're always on our anniversary or big episodes. And it's really special.
Well, it's perfect because, go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say, I appreciate that you guys always invite me for the special episodes. It makes me feel good.
Good.
When it works out that it's our 250th episode and it's the 50th anniversary of JAWS, which we are talking about today, which is just, synchronicity, or what's that movie that about, my wife loves that movie about where things just go right. And it's a romantic rom-com.
Yeah, I think it's synchronicity.
Synchronicity. Okay. I was just like, maybe I
mean,
was
that's what
doubting if that was a
synchronicity
word
means,
for
yeah,
a second.
but,
I was like, is that really a word?
Yeah.
And you could catch all of those special episodes if you subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Spotify channel or Apple Podcast channel or any of those other RMS feeds or places where you can catch us on the regular. You can be there for all of Bruce episodes. You can be there and check out last week's episode with Caleb Spilliards, who was the fight coordinator on Thunderbolts and Ballerina. We had an incredible time with him. So
Wow.
many good insights about how fights coordination works, how you design them, how he works with directors on set. It was really, really good episode. I highly recommend. Even just as a writer, it was interesting to see what they do and don't pay attention to in a script, right?
Yeah.
So Caleb Spilliar's episode was last week. A very, very awesome time with him. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, this episode, or next week's episode. Subscribe to all our channels. Pretty please.
How did you get him on the podcast? That's a pretty
He's
good
an Arkansas
catch.
native.
Okay.
Honestly, it's because of Johnny Brennan. Johnny Brennan is the ultimate connection.
Yeah.
He's friends with him, and I've been friends with him for a long time on Facebook. I don't know how. I guess it's through Johnny.
Yeah.
And I just finally reached out to him. I've been wanting to for a while, and he was like, immediately, yes. And I was like, cool. So the bar's high, Bruce. You're following up Caleb. He's great. He knows
really
what he's
good.
talking about, and he's very talented. And I mean, obviously, he just did Ballerina and stuff and Thunderbolts. So
Well, one thing I just added, not this past year, but the year before, to my directing classes, I do a day on shooting action, which
wow.
it's a lot easier to teach sort of shooting dialogue scenes, and in some ways that's the bread and butter, especially of indie films, which is what most of our students do. But I was like, I need to find some basic way to sort of get them thinking about how to shoot basic action, I'm not talking car chases and stuff like that, but just, like a basic fight scene, or it doesn't even have to be a fight. It could actually be like a basketball game and stuff, but where you have a lot of movement and action. And just, I've been trying to give my students some basic ways to conceptualize sort of different approaches to how to shoot that. So,
You can add last week's podcast to that curriculum.
Yeah,
you can just make it
absolutely. I'm
required.
going to listen to it,
Required
and it
listening.
might be something to have the students listen to for sure.
No, but actually,
Well-
he is talking about wanting to come and do some stuff, like workshop type stuff back here. So,
Okay.
yeah. So
Actually, he
there's
would be
probably some
great for our
potential.
visiting art. I'm going to write that down because, we have a visiting artist program at UCA, and we can pay people decent money, and
yeah, he starts
great.
August 6th on his online course, and he's like Daniel said, talking about workshopping. And we mentioned to him on the podcast that we wanted to connect you with him.
yeah.
So we can do that after the pod. But I think it'd be great, and I would love to see you guys connect. Yeah, episode 250, guys. We were talking the 50th anniversary. Is it 50th anniversary or 60th? It's 50th.
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 Okay, 50th anniversary of
1975.
Jaws.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to start off by saying I've seen this movie quite a few times. I mean, I say it not maybe as much as others, but like 4 or 5 times. So I feel like it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I ever saw it, I was 4 years old or 5 years old. I still remember it. I'm watching it with my parents. And I saw it in theaters once. And every time I watch it, I just, first of all, it's Steven Spielberg, and he's always been my top five favorite directors. And watching it last night, I'm just like, oh man, he's so good. And just watching everything, we can talk about it in detail here in a second, but it's just one of those things where you get reminded. And also, again, it makes you, even though I love Superman, I love Fantastic Four and all these movies coming out, it's always a reminder that we've really lost something in the grand scheme of things in filmmaking. And I hope we get it back. And I think if you haven't seen Jaws, you should check it out. It's fantastic. And for 50 years old, I mean, I was laughing last night in places, and I've seen it 4 or 5 times. I was laughing in places I don't really laugh in movies very often. I normally just kind of like laugh in my head,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't really like laugh out loud, but there's places I was laughing out loud and
Yeah.
suspense. I mean, it has it all. And I was just like, wow, this is what movies used to be like. So
Yeah.
that's my thoughts on it, just general thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jaws is a fantastic movie. It's kind of funny. I mean, I don't want to say it's gotten a bad rap because everyone thinks it's a great movie, but it's also the movie that sort of kickstarted the summer blockbuster, and so in some ways, it kind of led to maybe a slight decline in the complexity of movies from that
The
perspective.
the Jaws theme music may be one of the most like used references in other media like
Yeah,
ever. The
yeah,
amount of times people have used that for commercials or in just shows or like the whole idea of something following you in the bum bump
yeah,
like that
yeah,
that's such an iconic
yeah,
thing that's everywhere. Even if
yeah.
you've never seen Jaws, you probably know about that or
Yeah.
have seen that.
I do want to talk about the music later on in the podcast, but I do want to follow up because I do agree with Donovan a lot. I think that in some ways this movie reminds us of what we've lost in. I mean, this is a hard movie to categorize genre-wise. I guess you might call it action horror or something. It's not exactly a horror film, but of course, it's a monster movie, and that's often considered a subgenre of horror. But I think it's a little more a bit of an action drama, maybe. But I think to me, the really big thing that in terms of like what we've lost and what this is a reminder of is how few action movies today feature normal people as the
Mm.
protagonists. Chief Brody, I mean Quint's a little off the deep end, but Brody, Quint, and Hooper are ordinary guys. Like they're everyday normal people who have been thrust into an extraordinary situation. And I think that just makes it so much fun and so interesting because the characters are interesting and compelling, their interactions are compelling, and they're real people, And I think when we watch action movies today, especially with the rise of the superhero movie, we have so few action movies where the character is just a normal person. And even when you look at like I don't know, sort of non-superhero-ish movies like John Wick. I mean, he's still kind of a superhero, you know what I mean? He is above and beyond sort of a normal human being. I even think about like the upcoming Mr. Nobody sequel. I mean, he's supposed to be a normal guy, but he's got all this super duper training that makes him not exactly a normal guy. And when I think back on the past 50 years of cinema, it's interesting with Spielberg, having this movie because I think the one actor who personified the everyman in action movies was Harrison Ford, and of course he's kind of at the end of his career, obviously, and I'm not sure we've really gotten back to that idea of like putting an everyman into action type movies. And there's just something really great about seeing normal everyday people having to rise to the occasion of extraordinary circumstances and deal with them. And I'm not saying that none of those movies exist, but they're pretty rare. And to me, that was a big thing that stuck out in rewatching Jaws.
One thing that just kind of add on to that, it's a note I have on here. And I was like, oh yeah, it's really, I put this in the 5 minutes in, I miss casting like this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because in actually a recent example that we've talked about on the pod, Daniel, is Andor, where they're casting people that feel like real people. They feel like
Mm,
people you would see on the
Hmm.
street or in your
Hmm.
town. And they're
Hmm.
not like beautiful model people. They're
Yeah.
not big stars. They're just casting people that fit the role. And
Yes.
like Quint and Hooper and, Brody. Like Brody's not like this. I mean, I'm sure some people find him attractive, but he's not Chris Hemsworth or
right.
something like that. And there's just something really nice about that because it also just doesn't. And another example, I was watching the beach scenes, like the wide shots, and I'm just in there picking out people, and I was like, I'm gonna look and see if there's anyone super hot, and I was like, I bet there's not, and there's
Yeah.
not because it would take you out of the moment. Like you would immediately start looking at them versus like taking in the scene. And I think that's super smart, and it's just. Again, I miss it. I miss that kind
Yeah,
of
you see that
thinking.
a lot in older movies where the minor characters, the extras, they really did feel like locals. They felt like
Yeah.
they came from
Yeah.
that place. And whether, I mean, whether it's the mayor or whether it's,
The old
Chief,
dude, the
yeah,
cap,
Chief
he felt
Brody,
so
yeah,
normal.
the two fishermen who blow up the or who the pier gets torn off, whether it's Brody's assistant, I mean all these people they look and feel like real people, it's not like every actor has like what do you call it, the teeth, the fake teeth,
Yeah. Yeah.
Veneers.
Veneers. Yeah.
veneers. Thank you. I was like, I think it was
Yeah.
veneers, but
Yeah.
yeah, like, and you watch a movie now and like every person, even the extras, seem to have veneers, um, and these are just normal looking people. So I
I hope I'm
completely agree
strong
with you.
enough and secure enough to keep my normal teeth for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? I
Well,
mean,
I
like
mean, you
right now,
even
I'm
look.
like, I'd never do that. But then I'm like, I mean, I get insecurity. I've made impulsive decisions before. So
You've got good looking teeth there.
well,
Oh,
thank
there you
you.
go.
Thank you.
I think
That's
I,
why I actually invite you onto this podcast, Bruce, is for physical appearance affirmations. So keep them coming.
I I'll say an example, kind of another recent example that's on the flip side is like Oppenheimer, where and I get the idea. It's like, well, you want these big cast, stars because you want people to come watch your movie. But you have like Matt Damon and Cillian Murphy is not like an ugly looking guy, even though he kind of looks rougher in that movie in some places. But you have Emily Blunt and Matt Damon and
Yeah.
Rami Malek, and Downey looks kind of older compared to this other stuff, but still you're casting stars. And when they pop up, even Rami Malek for a second or whatever, you're like, oh, you're just pulled out of the movie for a
Yeah.
second, and again, I love that movie, but it's just and they're probably doing it better than others. But I miss this little antidote
Yeah.
here.
Well, even on
Yeah.
that side of things, a great 21st century version. I mentioned Harrison Ford as a leading man, but if you watch Andrew Davis's The Fugitive, that is a
Mm,
great movie where they shot in Chicago and they cast pretty much all local Chicago actors as the cops, the extras, and other than our main leads, you got a lot of Chicago actors who just look and feel like
mm,
they belong in that movie.
Another amazing movie.
yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that movie so much. Or
Yeah.
Daniel, what do you think about Jaws?
Yeah, I love it. It's I'd have probably only seen it once or twice beforehand. It was probably on TV and growing up, and so I probably only caught bits of it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like mainly what I remembered was like the beginning and the end. Like most of the middle was a blank for me, like just in terms of memories. And so, man, what a gorgeous movie! The cinematography is just incredible. Like some of those shots on the ocean, the framings are just so interesting. The way it feels, you feel small amidst these giant ocean shots. He'll put the characters in the very like edges of the corners of the screen. There's just some amazing, like just like the idea is to have these shots and to do these things and for it to feel so connected to the emotion of the moment in the story. It's just like, that's where you're like, that's filmmaking, right? It's like, yes, it's technically amazing, but it's not technically amazing for the sake of being technically amazing. It's technically amazing because it reinforces everything else that's going on with the story. It's one of those movies that's just, I agree with you guys. It makes you miss this kind of filmmaking, this kind of, almost patience with telling a story. I mean, I know we talk about attention spans and stuff. And there are parts of it where I'm like, I recognize where modern movies are maybe just more efficient with storytelling than sometimes these older movies are, where these older movies might take 3-4 beats to tell 3 or 4 different things. I feel like a modern movie will use 1 beat to do multiple things, and it doesn't do that. And there's parts of that you admit, I don't know, I'm like, okay, well, we didn't need another shot of the townspeople complaining about them closing the beach. Like, we had that 3 times already. It's just like those little, and it's not annoying. It's just like more I'm noticing, okay, this is how we've changed. This is how we've kind of changed from this way in a bit. The performances are incredible. I mean, Quint, of course, but they're all just, they really draw you in every time they're on screen. The actors, their facial expressions, how they deliver lines. I agree. It has just a normal people yelling over each other. I love the moment where Dr. Hooper is like yelling at the mayor, basically like you're an idiot. Like I'm getting out of here before you're like next in line for lunch. It felt like such a real confrontation that would happen in real life. And I don't know. There's so many elements that are just, I feel like plain to see is like amazing. Like, and I think you look back and, this is 1975 and there was already a bunch of movies out that were amazing, had done a lot of these like modern techniques already. But for me, this movie, you watch it, it doesn't feel like it was made in the 70s in a way. You know what I mean? Like it feels modern in the camera movement. It feels modern in the narrative pacing. Like this movie is the perfect movie to show how you do tension and how you do suspense. And oftentimes the tension and the suspense is far worse than like the bad thing that happens. And sometimes it's almost anticlimactic in that like the bad thing that finally happens is like, okay, that was bad, but not as scary as I thought it was going to be. But I don't know. The movie is just so good at making you feel like you're safe. And then you're not, and you're like, okay, actually we are safe. Oh, but now you're actually not safe. It's got this great back and forth pinging of that stuff going on. So, I mean, I could keep gushing about it, but I knew I liked JAWS, but I feel like watching it again and kind of with a more thoughtful lens, it's like, dang, this movie's incredible. You know what I mean? It's
well, yeah,
really
and
good.
I think the things that you just can keep listing stuff, I mean, just sort of what you were talking about, like with the conversations, the number of times there's probably 3 or 4, maybe there's even a half a dozen conversations where there are 2, 3, 4, 5 characters all talking at
Yeah.
the same time, which we almost never see in movies anymore, and you can barely follow what everyone's saying, but you get the
Yes.
gist of it,
Yes.
and it's what really happens and how people argue. And that's just one little thing, and you could keep going on, like you said, with the compositions and the use of the wide angle lens and the framing of all the characters, and of course everything on the boat and how that was shot. I mean, it really is a tour de force.
One last thing I want to mention before we kind of start diving more into it is that I think one of its superpowers is that it feels like real life, but it also its biggest trick or superpower is it's still a movie. Like
Yeah,
these are characters that I don't think I would, especially Hooper and of course Quinn, but Hooper is someone who sticks out to me where their interactions, what they kind of do in the moment, they feel like a movie character. They don't feel like someone in real
Sure.
life. But also they're realistic. It's like I could see that guy in real life, but I've never seen that guy in real life. And like just also the kind of way they interact just feels like, and again, it feels like a trick. Like their interactions feel so seamless, but also I'm like whenever example they're putting their legs on top of each other when they're comparing scars, just that little action, or even when he's like finds Brody at the end and he puts his arm around his arm on the buoy or the rest the wreckage of the ship. There's just things they do that feel like I can't explain it. I can't. Maybe you guys can help me articulate it as we're going. but it just feels, I don't know, it feels special in a way. And I can't, again, I've been thinking about it since last night and I haven't figured out what it is yet.
In some ways, I feel like it is like this. Part of it is that like we have these, cinematic, beautiful shots, sweeping cameras, the amazing dolly zoom that's iconic, so much. They're doing a lot with the camera a lot, but then sometimes they'll just sit there and they'll just let you watch characters do stuff. And in those ways, too, I almost feel like it grounds the movie more because it's not just constantly zooming around in these crazy angles and like, getting a telephoto lens and, going over their legs and showing the scar tissue in detail. It's just like, here's two guys getting drunk talking about like stories and shit. And there's just something about it, the way that it's filmed, the way the boat's rocking back and forth with the camera, it feels unspecial in those moments what the camera is doing. And I guess in some ways I think that highlights when the camera does crazy stuff, but it also just lets those moments kind of breathe in such a natural way that like modern editing techniques or modern like coverage techniques don't really do anymore as much.
Well, yeah, that's certainly Spielberg, and especially in the first half of the movie before they get on the boat, not that I mean, they use the wide angle lens a lot on the boat, but even like on the shore, you've got a lot of depth compositions, where there's stuff happening in the foreground, there's stuff happening in the background, or you've got, a whole row of characters and they're each doing different things. Donovan, to your point about the acting, it's sort of funny that you sort of pointed out Hooper as the movie character, because Quint feels to me more like the movie character, kind of the over the top, a little crazy, always singing the songs. I actually think Richard Dreyfuss, in a way, steals the show in
For
terms of his
sure.
acting, because in that first half, I mean, so much of his acting is just these facial expressions and the rolling of the eyes and the constant like shaking of the head, and he's doing so much. I'm not saying there's subtle movements, but at the same time, like he's doing so much without dialogue, and he's doing a lot of it when he's not the main focus of the scene. There you've got a argument between the mayor and Brody, and then you've just got Hooper just almost in comic relief. And maybe that's what it is there's a sort of a comic
Yeah.
relief to the expressions where he's just, he just can't believe it. And then of course he gets less subtle, and then he gets on the boat and Quint's ordering him around, and he's doing the gigantic,
Yeah.
doing all this kind of stuff at him. But yeah,
Mm.
so many things. And before we jump in, of course, I have to mention the thing that we haven't mentioned at all, and I'm shocked that you guys have not mentioned it, which is the name of the shark. Neither one of you know the name of the shark?
No, I do. It's Bruce.
It's
Bruce.
Bruce.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to think about it for a second.
Like
Yeah.
the
I was
name they
like,
gave on
Jaws?
set.
It's like Jaws?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I
It's
mean,
not in the movie, I'm
not
guessing.
in the movie.
Okay, I
Yes,
was like,
yeah.
where
Yeah,
did I miss
the
that?
name of the mechanical shark that they used in that was
Mm,
at Universal.
mm.
I don't know if it still is, probably
it's
not.
That's funny.
prophetic that you're on here talking about
Yes, his
this.
name's Bruce.
This was
So,
everything was leading up to this moment. Everything in the
Yeah.
universe.
It was. Yeah, it was.
We just peaked. It's over.
Again, yeah. Bye, guys. We could talk again about composition, which I want to a little bit, but let's kind of get into the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This one's interesting. I do have like I wrote times here when things are starting to happen or what the scene was about. Um, you know, but I think it's also, I'm not sure I nailed down sequences. I think I just wrote down like every 5, 6 minutes. I was like, okay, this is happening now. So, obviously opening titles, opening kill, kind of setting this horror kind of, a little bit of horror tone in there. 5 minutes in, chief of police gets a missing persons report. So that first 5 minutes is kind of setting up Jaws and what's at stake here. And we also get a great little, camera pan of it's great again how Steven is foreshadowing where he's walking across the town or something like that effect, and we pan left to right, and we land on this big billboard of like Fourth of July, it's the regatta, 50th anniversary, and they don't mention it yet. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of shit I like, where it's like, oh, there's foreshadowing. If you're paying attention, then that's going to be important of like why the mayor's acting the way he's acting. Um, of course, Brody's from New York, so he's already a fish out of water, no pun intended. I'm not sure if they mentioned this in the beginning, but you guys can tell me, do they kind of mention that he's kind of not great on water in the first 12 minutes or so? Or he doesn't like water? I don't remember that being mentioned.
I don't think they mention it till a little later.
Yeah,
They
I think
don't set it up in the first 10
his
minutes or
wife maybe
so.
talks about it when they're on the beach later or something. I know, I
maybe.
remember
Yeah.
that being
Yeah.
a moment where it's really highlighted, at least.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I'm curious where you guys, or maybe you're getting there, Donovan.
I was, well, I was going to say, like, around the 12-minute mark, they try to shut down the beach, and the mayor steps in, which is a great, like, that ferry sequence. The
Oh
Yeah.
way it's
yeah,
shot is just, it makes my head pop off. I'm just like, that's the kind of shit I like to see. That's the kind of stuff I want to
yeah,
do. I can't, there's this thing too, like how the camera keeps backing up. I mentioned this in Back to the Future. The camera backs up, it reframes when people walk across, and then I love this thing that he does where they'll come closer and he tilts up at them. And
Yeah.
like
hmm
I don't like camera stuff where it's too low to the ground looking up at actors. I just don't like the way it looks visually, but I like it when he does it. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
I love it. After 12 minutes, shark dies, Brody's on the case, and the mayor steps in to kind of be like, yo, let's kind of put our brakes a little bit on this.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, like, it almost begins. I mean, like, you could say the very first moment of the movie is the inciting incident in a way, right? In terms of just the shark attacks, and that is the domino that makes every other domino fall. At the same time, it almost feels like you could call this moment the inciting incident just because it's what sets up the main conflict, which is not just that there's a shark, but that how do we take care of the public and how do we warn them and what do we do about the beaches, which is like the bulk of the middle, which is like the middle of the movie is all about that.
Yeah. Real first half, yeah.
And so it's interesting how like I was kind of looking this at as kind of sequences at first, but I feel like you can kind of break it either way. I'm curious where you draw the line on that.
I think obviously the shark killing the girl, that feels really important because it is. But I think that the inciting instinct really kicks in around between 14 and 18 minutes where it's like, okay, now we kind of officially know it's a shark and we're going to have to go and kill it or find it and kill it or capture it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's kind of like it's like a horror film in some ways where it's like you're starting, instead of like having a nightmare and then someone wakes up from a bad dream, we're starting with the death scene, right? It makes it more interesting, whatever. Obviously, that pays off with Brody being informed about it. But it's like a horror film in that fact where it's like we're getting that first kill and we don't really know what the thing is, what the thing is, what's the monster, what's the ghost, whatever that is. And then that's kind of like the next 10, 15 minutes or whatever is kind of figuring out what are we up against or whatever. So I think there's a little parallel there. But yeah, I think around whenever they had the town meeting or the Zolly shot, I think the Zolly might be the one where Brody's like, all right, shit's going down
So
now.
when the kid dies, essentially.
That's where I was
Yeah,
gonna
the
say, yeah.
Zolly. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Zolly.
yeah, the way that I kind of looked at it was the killing of Chrissy at the beginning is the inciting incident setup, right? I mean, obviously, if that doesn't happen, you're right. We don't have the rest of the movie. But even though the medical examiner rules it initially a shark death, and as you pointed out on the ferry, the little ferry, we sort of have the backpedaling and boat propeller, So it's cast in doubt, and now we're sort of not sure, okay, I mean, obviously we know as an audience it's going to be a shark, but the characters are now sort of in a state of limbo. Is it a shark? Is it not? Is there anything to see here? And then I think it's Alex Kittner's death on the beach where the mayor has sort of won the argument and has kept the beach open, and then Alex is killed around the 17-minute mark. And to me, that's sort of the inciting incident payoff, where it's like, okay, it is 100% a shark, and now the rest of the movie is about how we deal with the shark, right? And everything is about the different steps of dealing with the shark. The rest of the first half of the movie is sort of dealing with the shark from land, so to speak. The arguments with the mayor, the paying of people, the various people's attempts to do things, the introduction of Hooper, who's, sort of our doubting Thomas. And then the second half, of course, goes out on the water. So for me, yeah, it's that real, I think, strong, the payoff inciting incident is when Alex Kittner is killed, because then there's no more doubt, right? It's like, we've seen the shark, we know it's a shark, everyone has witnessed this. It's now officially a shark movie, right?
Hmm.
And then from there, to me, it's a pretty typical four-act movie, although there is a weird thing that I want to address when we get to it. But yeah, because then once the inciting incident happens, um, we sort of have this goal, because we immediately after that we have we have the meeting about whether to shut down the beach, and they say, and the sheriff says, yes, we're shutting down the beach. And then immediately the mayor, because he's the mayor, I think it wasn't discussed, but then he's like, for
24.
24
Yeah.
hours,
Yeah.
he sort of throws this thing in. The
Yeah.
sheriff's
Yeah.
like, Hooper or Brody's like, wait, what? We didn't talk about
Yeah.
that. So now we sort of almost have a goal for the rest of Act One, right? Which is, can we catch and kill a shark within 24 hours so that we can keep the beach open, right? And then, of
Yeah.
course, the Act One climax, um, um, in a sense, is
They
they
catch
caught
the
the
shark.
shark,
Hooper
right?
shows up.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's sort of this extended scene, but we're
28 minutes is when Matt Hooper shows up for well, he does the autopsy at 28
yeah, so
minutes,
we
but
do the autopsy, and he says it was a shark. And that uh that a little bit is a bit it triggers the climax, right? Because he says it's a shark, and then we almost literally cut to the shot of the shark that the local fishermen have caught.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, okay, we've caught the shark, everything's good, right? And so
Yeah.
that Act One climax is a bit of a, it's not really a fake out, because again, we've got Hooper saying this is not the shark, but everyone acts as if they've caught the shark, right? So, oh, we can open the beach for the 4th of July, and we can do all these things. We've solved we've solved it. It's fine. And, everything there's no problem. But for Brody and Hooper, there is a problem, right? Because if we get this Act One climax that says, oh, hey, we've caught the shark, nothing to see here, Brody and Hooper are going, no, there is a shark. And their Act Two goal becomes to prove that the shark that got caught is not the shark, right? And there's a lot of things that they do to try to prove that this isn't the shark, including going out on the water and finding Ben Gardner's boat and losing the tooth, and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff is part of that Act Two goal of proving that this is not the shark, right?
You could almost look at Mrs. Kittner's speech at Brody as somewhat of I mean, it's not, in a way, like they were probably going to keep trying to find the real shark and prevent attacks anyway, but it feels like in a way it is like the juice that gets added to the fire for our character, for our protagonist, Brody, for him to like be relentless in a way.
I agree with you. And for me, that's, if the climax of Act One is seeing the shark, and then that whole scene sort of runs until Mrs. Kittner shows up, and then she slaps Brody and leaves. To me, that's the end of the first act, right? Because then, like you said, that is for sure. If he wasn't motivated before, he is motivated now to team up with Hooper and try to get to the truth and prove that this little shark that they've caught is not the shark that has killed Chrissy and Alex.
Yeah.
yeah.
I just wanted to mention that Brody is somewhat interesting in that he does feel everyman, but he almost feels like too protagonisty in a way, where it's like he always makes the right choice. He's never really at an emotional impasse of like he's always right in this movie. It's other people opposing him that get in the way of him achieving his goals in a way, right? And so it is interesting in a way, like even just this moment where it's like he's getting blamed for what the mayor did, and he doesn't even like speak up or whatever. Like he kind of like internalizes it and decides to be even better. There's part of that almost feels a little bit like I mean, I feel like anybody would be like, I tried. Like, you know what I mean?
It's a movie though.
Exactly.
Like
that's where it feels.
movie
He feels like a
101.
movie character in that moment.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
a
and
little
he
bit,
can't do
you
that
know?
because what is he's going to tell this grieving widow, like,
It
you're
wouldn't be
wrong,
great
it's
for
not my
optics,
fault, you
but
know? I mean, he really can't do that.
Listen here, lady.
Yeah.
I guess his reaction to feel ashamed at like I could have done more. That just feels a little too white
Well, he
knight
could've.
protagonisty, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
he did everything he thought he could do. The mayor comes in and strong arms him out of it, and now it's
Well, yeah,
Well,
so,
but he's also from out of town. He's from New York, so there's a sense that he knows better. You know, like he knows. I get the sense that he knows better, even though again, it's a movie. Well,
No, I
the
agree.
movie,
I'm just saying this is we were talking earlier about characters feeling like normal people. This is a moment where he doesn't. This is the moment where to me he feels like the protagonist.
well, I
Capital
think
D,
he goes back and
protagonist.
forth. In some ways he feels like a normal character because you're right. He lets the mayor push him around, right? I mean, in the end,
And that feels realistic. He's new. This
Yeah,
mayor is
exactly.
charismatic.
Yeah.
He got the coroner to change the report. I mean, like that's the moment that convinces him is not the mayor. He's like, he looks at the coroner and he's like, "You think it was a boating accident?" He's like, "I was mistaken." And like,
Yeah.
again, that moment feels so real too because it's like, you were like, well, I mean, he could have gotten it wrong. Like there's reasonable doubt, right?
I think he's an interesting protagonist because you're right. I think on a moral level, he's above board. He gets pushed around a little bit, but he always knows what the right thing is. He's not always strong enough to do it, and then certainly after the Act One climax, he is strong enough to do it. But it's also worth noting that in the second half of the movie, he really takes second fiddle to
Yes.
to Brody and Hooper because he doesn't know what he's doing, right? Or I said to Brody, but to Quentin and Hooper, because this is not his area of expertise. He does get the big hero moment at the end of the movie, but in a lot of ways, he's kind of the bystander. He has to do what the other characters tell him to do. I will point out one thing, and I don't want to call it a flaw. I think it's just a product of its time, and it reminds me of our discussion of Back to the Future, which is he doesn't really have an internal goal. These days, most of the time, we expect a character to have some sort of internal conflict or goal that they have to overcome that often helps them then achieve the external goal. And the funny thing is the movie actually does set it up, which is afraid of water, right? But the movie doesn't, weirdly, and I guess this is a small criticism of the movie, it doesn't really pay it off in any way because every time he has to go out on the water,
he does it.
Does it,
Yeah.
Especially,
And there's a moment where they almost touch on it, right? Where one character's like probably some kind of trauma from childhood, right? Like they're like hit, and he's like doesn't want to talk about it. Like so, it's like almost
He
weird
also
because they like
lifts
kind
up
of
his
glaze over.
shirt, like he has a scar from something else too, but he doesn't bring it up. Correct? Like doesn't he like look at his ab area, like his oblique area, and he's like when they're talking about it, like he doesn't bring it up. It's like he also went through something, but he doesn't
I
talk
don't remember
about
that part.
yeah, I think you're right though. But
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a sense of like, I think the first time they go out on the boat at night, he shows his fear, right? But then when we get to the end of Act Two, beginning of Act Three, and they hire Quint and they go out, we sort of lose track of the idea that he's afraid of water, and he just does it. He just goes out on the boat and he's not afraid, and he does everything he needs to do, and there really isn't that sense of like that he's got to overcome that fear. Like there's not a point where he has to be the one to get into the shark cage or where he has to jump in the water and overcome his fear of water in order to defeat the shark. So you could say there's a bit of a missed opportunity to kind of give him that little bit of extra complexity and inner life that we're used to now with characters. But I still think that's a pretty minor thing.
Well, it's also
at
the
the same
last
time,
line
it's
of the
like-
movie. Sorry, Jacob.
Yeah. Well,
It's literally like that's how the movie ends. It is weird.
It
I
is
agree
a weird
with you.
ending. The ending is a little soft. It's interesting because going back to what we were saying, like there's only so much real estate in this movie. I mean, it doesn't need another 30 minutes. So I hear you. You're right. Like typically we would expect his fear of water to intricately play into the reason he succeeds externally, but at the same time, if that was all in there, I don't think we would be having all this amazing time with Quentin Brody, right? Like their chemistry and kind of like brotherly sparring is a lot of what makes the like final two acts like just really rich and just like, and of course Quint's speech. And so in some ways you're like, yeah, I would, if narrative brain says, yeah, we probably need more of an emotional through line for this character. But at the same time, the movie succeeds so much because of these like side characters that you fall in love with and that are just so interesting. And it almost like, you don't care that the protagonist is sunk into the background at the end. It doesn't bother you.
Well,
you
yeah,
know?
and I think we've replaced one thing with another, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think we get the depth is not so much Brody overcoming his fear of water; it's the bonding of three completely different men.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Brody and Quint are a little bit more from the same generation, although really, I think the idea is that they're three different generations. We've got the World War
Yeah.
II vet. You could almost imagine Brody is maybe a Vietnam vet. I mean, they don't say
Sure.
that, but like age
Yeah.
wise, right? And then Hooper's sort of the young kid who comes in with
And
with all of his brash know
and
it
it,
all.
and
But he's right,
yeah.
and so like that makes it all really interesting, and the way that they overcome their differences and work together in the second half of the movie. Very slowly, obviously. I mean, sort of Act Three is very much them at odds with each other, and then Act Four, as things get more desperate, they come together. And like you said, I think to me, we'll get there, but that Act Three climax of the speech about the USS Indianapolis
Yeah.
is really where the bonding takes place, and then it's really about three guys going through something together, right? And that's where we
Yeah.
get our emotional context and meaning out of the movie.
Well, it really starts feeling like more of an adventure film, action
Oh
adventure
yeah,
than
yeah,
a horror at that
absolutely.
point too.
Yeah,
And it's really interesting how the movie kind of changes its tone over time.
yeah.
I want to dig into it more later, but we can get to it.
Yeah, I marked it when the exact minute the tone
Well,
changed.
it's the music
Um,
too. Like this
it's the
music, and so I was
music.
like, this sounds like music in Indiana Jones, like right now.
Yeah.
Like this is the
Well, it's
Indy
John
going on
Williams,
the
so yeah.
adventure, the map, dotted line across the map music.
Right.
Just a few things I wanted to highlight before we hop into Act Two. Just things I thought were cool. One, whenever they're on the beach with the Zolly, a thing that I don't really see anymore, or a technique I haven't seen in a long time is they're cutting on the person walking across the frame. Like
Right.
as soon as a person walks, they cut to closer up of Brody, or they'll cut to the ocean. And I just thought it was brilliant. And I just
Yeah.
like the timing of the person walking across, but his facial expression. I'm sure a lot of that was found in the edit, and I'm sure there was probably some trial and error, but it feels like they just nailed it. And it's like, man, it feels so thoughtful. And again, it's one of those things where like I just don't know if someone tried it today, they would do as well.
Well,
Um,
it perfectly mirrors like trying to look past a crowd to get a view, right?
yeah,
Because
well, it's
every
very
time,
thriller. It's very
ev-
thriller, like
yeah,
old school
every time
thriller.
passes, you're like, okay, well, I want to see, but then it cuts, and so you don't get to see what was behind that person. So it's brilliant. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what a great technique.
And I would say, still just sort of looking at the little moments of Act One, where I think we get a lot of little things that are details that we kind of don't spend time with. Um, whether it's Brody wondering why the sun is shining through the window, which is kind of a fun moment and also gives us a little bit of exposition about how long they've been there. They've lived there since the fall, but they haven't experienced a summer, right? So we
Yeah.
get some information out of that. Um, and it's also him complaining as he's like, why am I getting up so early? Because the sun is shining through this window. And then, for instance, when he goes into the hardware store, and he's trying to get the painting supplies, and we've got two things going on. Yeah, one is he knocks over the jar with the paintbrushes, and that little moment, I think, it just is another little thing. And when he comes into the hardware store, there is a conversation happening about one of the guys complaining that he's ordered all of these beach supplies and they haven't come in, and he's
Yeah.
giving the hardware store owner a hard time about it all. And all those just kind of little layers, that give the movie. Again, it just feels real, right? It just gives us the sort of the layers of reality, the layers of real life. Now, again, it's not to say that this movie is 100% realistic, and we will strip away some of that reality at the end in sacrifice to adventure and fun, and
Hmm.
obviously, the way in which they he kills the shark is a little ridiculous,
Right up my alley is where it's
but it
at. Yeah.
but is great,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the movie has changed a little bit, right?
There's two more things I want to highlight before we hop in night two. One of them is I mentioned the ferry, the big wide shot, and just
Yeah,
whatever. I guess three things. There's also this thing too, like we'll have people on like far left, like basically licking the frame, like they're just like almost
yeah, yeah,
hanging off the frame. And when I first see it, it's a little jarring for me. But then if you wait like 5 seconds, then someone will come in and fill that gap perfectly, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
there you go, Spielberg,
Or
there you
it's in
go.
the end when it's the ocean shot and the middle is just ocean. And it
Yeah,
just gives you this feeling of the characters are so far apart, or like the ocean is swallowing them almost. It's
yeah,
yeah.
but
I
you're
love
right.
it.
Yeah, yeah, leaving spaces for things to happen, and of course, probably the most classic version of that is when Brody is chumming and
Oh
there's
yeah,
Yeah.
the space over his shoulder that of course the shark is going to move into, and you can almost it almost creates that suspense. I mean, obviously as filmmakers we might notice that, but even an ordinary audience member might feel something off about that moment as we go back and forth, and because we're cutting to him and then I forget we're cutting the other characters, and we've just got this big space just waiting for a giant shark mouth to appear.
yeah, it's brilliant. The other moment is whenever he walks into his office and there's like all these people in there, and the way we track with him and people are walking in
Hmm.
the frame, filling things in, and then we're kind of pushing into the office, and that frame is cut off there. Like you see her step in and she's talking to him. Half the frame is, a wall, but then it's
Right.
like we're focused on this scene. It's like we saw this wide thing become this like two shot, and then we insert to like him typing, and then we're back to that wide and we pull back out. It's just brilliant. It's just like my
Yeah.
favorite thing in filmmaking. Um, and last thing I want to mention is this is a cool little thing we set up with particular for the end of Jaws or in with Bruce or Jaws is he takes the dock in this first, I think in this first act, the dock rips off and it's kind of like you can see where
Clint.
Jaws
Yeah.
is based on what's attached to him. And I think it's a great way to set
Wow, I didn't
up
even
the
think about
boot.
that.
Yeah, you're setting that moment up. It's just a cool moment. It's very suspenseful because the guys are trying to swim away, but that totally ties in later. It just sets up your expectation of like, okay, the
It's
buoy's
really
going to be, which
interesting.
is something I always forget. I always forget Quint dies, and the buoys are used at the end. I always forget these two things.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to set that buoy thing up. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I mean that scene kind of felt random before you mentioned that in a way. Like I mean,
Yeah,
like it's a tense scene, right? And it has a moment to be scared by the shark and have someone scrambling to get out of the water. So like, there's inherent value to it as a horror movie to just have scenes like that. But like narratively, you're right. Like that was totally setting up the end. I just never connected that. That's really cool.
yeah, I think it's really cool. At the 38-minute mark around this area, Brody kind of has this moment with his son, right? We're starting act two. He just got slapped at the pier, and he's feeling guilt from that, and he's also like more gung ho now because he believes Hooper, that this isn't the shark. And here's where I kind of felt. I put in my notes. I feel like Matt is like this. He's realistic, but he's also this movie character. He just shows up with wine and starts eating the food, eating
Right.
Oh
his
well,
food, and
no, I
it
thought it
just
was
feels
this.
like.
It almost like I agree, but then I thought they indicated he was invited somewhere. Maybe like did they
And
not?
maybe
Did
they
they never
did.
I
indicate he
don't
was
think so. I
invited?
think he
Okay,
just stops by. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
But I mean, but also just that. Yeah, God, I feel like I'm a shill for. I am a shill for this movie, I guess. But it's just like the interaction at the table, how Brody just like is what like they just hands in the play,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's just it's incredible, like how interesting they are and how they interact with each other and like there's kindness there, but like I can't explain it, guys. It's wild to me. It's
Well, there's
wild.
yeah, there's a lot going on at the beginning of Act Two. I think that's also where he's looking at the shark books, and the kid is sitting in the boat, and
Mm-hmm.
then he's like he doesn't want the kid in the boat, and then his wife looks at the
Yeah.
book, and to get all that. But yeah, even before Hooper shows up with the wine at dinner, we've got that great moment where Brody is thinking, and then his kid is mirroring everything that he does,
So
and you-
good.
and and you really get that sense of humanity of the characters, and then how much he loves his son. And at the end, he's even though he's sort of really stressed out, and he doesn't know what to do about this. He has this light moment with his kid and remembers, it's like how
The
much
only
he
part
loves
that's
him, and kind of
weird.
laughs with him a little bit. And
The only part that's weird is the give us a kiss. because I need it. That's probably like, okay,
I
that's
thought it was
a
very
little bit of a
sweet,
hint.
and
Yeah, I like it too.
I
I just
loved it.
think
It
there would be
just
a better way to do it, but that's just me.
maybe I feel like I feel like I do that with River. I'm like, can I have a kiss? And he'll like give me a kiss on the cheek, like, and just because I feel, and it's exactly for that
Yeah,
reason, like because I feel like
but
I
he
needed to.
doesn't. You
Yeah.
asked, not demanded.
Sure,
Anyway,
yeah,
it also
I
just
don't
weird to
know.
me that he says us. I was just like, I mean, I've heard that before. Why is
Again, I
that?
love that. I love the us. I don't know what it was. I
Yeah.
just
I
loved
think
it.
there's a little old-fashioned sense to
Yeah.
that and
It
probably
is.
feels just a little more 70s.
Yeah, it's like a man calling anyone a sweetheart. It's like calling guys sweetheart. Hey, sweetheart, what are you doing? You know, like there's
Yeah.
something about old fashioned, that kind of the way they speak. Um, yeah, I loved it. And I also there's this thing that, and I think this is part of the reason why I love this, is that, and Quinn does this in his speech on the World War II speech, and so does Brody. Brody does this too. They all do this, is that when they're, even though they're talking to, like, say, Brody's listening to Hooper, he's talking to Hooper, he's acknowledging how he feels about the other character to the other characters. Like he like when he hands the plate over there, he like looks at his wife and he's acknowledging her presence, and like you're seeing how he feels by basically talking to her, communicating to her, even though Brody's, or even though Hooper's the one talking. Quinn does the same thing. Quinn's talking to Hooper. Both of them, he's talking to Hooper, but he'll look over at Brody. And like he has like this wink or a flash in his eye. And it's like there's something magical about that. I just don't know if we see that anymore. I can't, I don't feel that way. Like they're
I
just real
think
people. I can't
I think
explain it.
there's yeah, I think there's a lot there, and one of the things I teach in my directing class that I think is missing from a lot of movies is the idea of having actors do things during dialogue scenes, that they're not just
Mhm.
sitting and talking. Um, and when you think about that scene with when Hooper comes over, we've already had the exchange with Brody and his kids, so it's not just Brody thinking. We add something in, so we get action, we get something happening. And then he comes and he's like, I'm not sure which wine you wanted. And so then we get the whole thing, which is a little bit of comic relief, where Brody opens the red wine and pours half of it into his glass, and then just gives the his wife and Hooper sort of normal amounts. But then as he's talking with Hooper and he's trying to get an explanation from Hooper about all of this stuff, he's peeling um, the aluminum, top, around the neck of the thing. So he's like slowly peeling that off. And then he finishes pulling that off and he asks a question, right? And then, of course, Hooper then grabs his food and starts eating it. So there's constant, like, little things happening. And I just contrast that with, like, I'm watching the second season of Sandman right now on Netflix, and one of the episodes has a 5-minute dialogue scene where two characters are sitting at either end of the table. They don't do a thing the entire time. And so the movie, to try to make it interesting, as it cuts back and forth, it just changes angles. And like that's the way it tries to spice things up. So it's like a head-on shot, and then a three-quarter shot, and then a profile shot, and then a head-on shot, and then a three-quarter shot, and it's like we're cutting between three different angles of each character as we move back and forth over this extremely long dialogue scene. And then I think about this scene. Now that was two characters, which is a little harder, and here we've got three or four characters, but just all the little things that they're doing, that are both giving them something to do, giving us a little bit of visual interest in the frame, reflecting how the characters feel. Obviously, him peeling the thing off of the wine bottle is reflecting his nervousness and anxiety over what to do. And I love all of those details where again it's like we're giving actors actions even when they're just in a simple dialogue scene. Obviously, they're active in the second half of the movie on the boat, but even when they're talking, they're doing little things a lot of times. Or when they go see Quint, and they're gonna hire Quint, and Quint goes and opens his boiling vat of bleach or whatever and pulls out the shark jaws that he's selling and then throws it back in. And I mean, and there's always feels like there's always something happening, even in simple dialogue scenes.
Well, I think also, of course, this is more for the listeners than for us, but it also just I feel like it gets the actors out of their head. They're not thinking about the dialogue anymore. They're it's more realistic that way. They're
Well,
thinking about
that's why I
yeah,
teach it a lot in my directing
exactly.
class.
Yeah.
It's a great way for especially working with beginning actors, but obviously it works great with, I mean, Roy Scheider by Jaws was a highly respected, well-known actor, and still doing that same thing, is he's pulling that off and he's in the moment then by doing that, right? And yeah, that keeps him grounded in the scene.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I put here at the 38-minute mark also where Matt shows up that this is where it's mentioned that Brody's afraid of water. Um, but I feel like again there might have been something on the beach with the Zolly. Um,
It was.
so
It was a
yeah,
conversation with his wife was talking to somebody
Yeah,
else.
yeah. It says he
After
never
the
that
beach.
even
yeah,
he'll
that
sit
guy
in
with
the
the
chair
hat
all
or
day. Or,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
which
was
is
like
like
your
so
hat.
funny. He
Yeah,
was like, "You're afraid of water" or something like that. And he was like, "You have a
your hat
stupid hat."
sucks.
Whatever. Yeah, he says.
He says that's
Yeah,
one bad hat, Harry.
Yeah, and the guy
Which
gets offended.
which
It's
is
great.
that J.J. Abrams? Wait, what is that?
Yeah, that's a production
That
company that did a lot of TV shows. I don't remember whose it
yeah,
is. I didn't go research that, but yeah,
What
uh,
is?
Bad
I
Hat
think that's
Harry. Yeah,
I think that's J.J. Abrams.
No, he's
Yeah,
Bad
when you said that,
Robot.
my brain just like went,
He's J.J.
what
Abrams
is
is
that?
Bad Robot.
I know that, but I think before Bad
I'll
Robot, it
I'll,
might
I'll
have
look
been
it up
Bad
real
Hat
quick.
Harry.
Okay.
Yeah, look it up. So yeah, so 30, a 43-minute mark, they cut the shark open, right? Him and Matt go out there. This great little sequence of him pulling things out. And also, hey, if you ever wondered about sharks, you get a lot of information about sharks in this movie, which is fun. I think it's, you get to learn all kinds of cool things.
It was
For
interesting too when he mentions that like we don't even know how long sharks live. It
yeah,
made me like go. I was like, I made me go on a small. I was like, what did scientists know about sharks when Jaws was released? And it was actually very
yeah,
little at that point. So it also kind of almost makes you put yourself in the shoes of an audience or viewer back then. More like we grew up with Shark Week. You know what I mean? Like we grew up with like 1 week a year all sharks all the time, all the science. And so there's so much more demystified nowadays. You know what I mean? Like we kind of know what the aggressive ones are. We know there's species that aren't as aggressive. But like back then, it wouldn't have been as much common knowledge or even just scientifically known. And so that was just, I don't know, that was a moment where it just kind of, it just made it more interesting to think, wow, like think about what this would have felt like if you had no kind of concept of what a shark was other than like a big thing in the ocean with teeth.
Well, I mean, in a way, I think it did have a negative consequence
Yeah,
in the sense
yeah.
that like it really did set up sharks as these monstrous animals that will kill you. And I mean, I think I mean, even Shark Week started off as a
Oh yeah,
more
yeah. It's like
let's go look at
horror,
sharks doing,
right? Yeah.
kill, being scary. And I think we've now advanced past that. And in fact, and on Instagram recently, I think it might have even been an AI, but it was still believable of like this woman, like, basically befriending and swimming with a great white shark and stuff. But
Hmm.
I should mention, by the way, Bad Hat Harry is Bryan Singer's
Oh,
old
that's what it
Oh,
production
is.
country
I was thinking, I
company.
was like, I was thinking Unusual Suspects is what my brain went to
Yes,
first.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Usual
Yes. Okay.
Suspects and a lot of the X-Men
yeah,
movies.
yeah.
Okay.
And then he was also doing television. So, like House is probably the most famous
Mm.
TV show that was done under that
House.
label. But or that,
I like House. We need
yeah,
to do
You know,
Usual Suspects. I haven't seen that in a long time.
yeah,
Unusual
it'd be a
Suspects.
great one to do.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be
you
great.
mentioned that, yeah, like Jaws definitely had a bad, it produced a bad public sentiment about sharks. But it was interesting, I was reading about that. I was just doing research after watching the movie about
yeah.
sharks and stuff. And one of the leading shark researchers says the reason they got into this was because of Hooper in the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so you're
So it's
right,
both sides, yeah.
but there's probably a lot of it that there wouldn't have been as much shark research done at
Research,
all
absolutely. Yeah.
before
But
Jaws.
it's also a horror thing. I mean, like
Yeah,
this, she's been alive for 2,000 years. It's like that's also a very
Yeah.
horror trope. Like they still don't know what this thing is. Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
completely. That's what's very
No,
much in line
but
with
it's just
horror.
it's an added layer of horror that we don't really get
Yeah.
now because we're so much more familiar with what these creatures are and how
Well,
they
and
operate.
I think
Well,
even more than the shark, though, by the way, is especially in the first half of the movie. I mean, it taps into that thing that when you think about it, anytime you go into the
Yes.
ocean or the sea or the Gulf, is
Yes.
you don't know what's down there, right? You're in this thing up
100%.
to your chest, like what is down there? What could go at me? And it could be anything from jellyfish to biting fish to sharks to anything. And there is that sense of the unknown, right? And that you don't know what's under the water, and it can be a scary thing, right? So I think fundamentally, the scariest thing is the shark, but the fundamental thing is like the not knowing, right? What's
Sure.
hidden
The
under the
unknown.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the ocean is terrifying,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
the deep, deep. There could be aliens down there. We don't know.
Yeah.
Thalassomophobia. There's
Yeah.
a word for it.
It's a great place to hide if you're an alien. Um, so yeah, 43 minutes, they cut the shark open. 45 minutes, they get on the boat and they find another boat and they check the hull. I remember, again, as a kid, I didn't really find this movie scary, but then I saw this in theaters. And when his head pops out, I remember jumping in the
That is
theater.
that big classic
Yeah.
horror
And
jump scare
yeah,
when because the
and
music
I was
has a
like
singer and it
26.
just
Yeah,
the head
It's one
I
comes
of the
was
out
only
and
ones. There's
an
not a lot.
adult.
There's not too many in this.
no, there's
Surprise! Like I
not.
was,
There's
I
not.
was,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking, oh, there's probably a bunch of these, but there wasn't as many as I was thinking there would be.
But Spielberg does this in like all his like Indiana Jones. There's like horror, like with the skeletons and things popping out, and he's great about doing that. And I don't know, I just always really he's great at woving in different tones and genres into things, even if it's like not inherently what it is on the surface.
Right.
I think Indiana Jones, I don't think horror film, but like that first 10 minutes with the skeleton, him walking into the skeleton and the big boulder. There's all these great things he weaves in there. I think it's great.
Oh, I agree, and I think that sort of opens the door to the fact that besides sort of having this horror, action, and adventure, we've talked about the mayor, but this has also got a lot of political commentary, right? I mean,
For
this
sure.
movie in the first, I mean, the second half is straight up, action adventure, but the first half is very much about a critique of capitalism and the weighing of people's livelihoods versus their lives and what is a life worth and obviously we see the mayor as an antagonist and not a good guy. But near the end, I mean, he does get his human moment, he's like, I've got kids too, and I was really trying to do what I thought was best for the community. Yes, he's in denial, and I think we can sort of reject his explanation a little bit, but also he's a normal guy. Also, yes, he's concerned about his political future, but everyone's concerned about their future, and all the shop owners also want the beach open, and I mean, there is a lot of weighing of these different costs, and I think the political observations are pretty interesting, and obviously in the end it does side sort of on the side of life versus money, but it's surprising how much of that is there, given that we're in what we think of as a summer blockbuster kind of movie. Like there is a lot of political commentary in that first half.
When we get to Quinn, I'm really curious to what you guys think about what that means, like what that story means. Um, Another thing, kind of, you mentioned him getting that human moment, the mayor in the hospital. There, he lights a cigarette up in there, right? And so it reminds you also just of how far back it is. And this is something that, me and Daniel are writing, we're trying to all the time. And I
Yeah.
just constantly find this is a little off topic, constantly find myself wanting to write movies that are like pre-90s because I think technology just really screws me up.
Right,
Like
right.
I think it's just so much, it's just not as fun or as interesting when you can just call somebody. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something like about like I like having a kid go to a payphone. If you know what that is, people, it's a thing. It's a big square. You can put a few quarters in and call your mom. And so like I never used a pay. Maybe I used a payphone once in my life, but I like that.
Yeah.
I like it, and I just think having phone just make things. It's made it more complicated for stories. Like I think it's made it more difficult in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, so they cut open the shark, or excuse me, they find Ben's boat, they find proof. they go back to the mayor, and that's where they sort of have that sort of funny conversation. I think in front of the billboard, where again they're trying to convince him, but they've lost the tooth, so they don't have the
Yeah.
proof. And Hooper is losing his mind over how dense the mayor is being. But the mayor refuses to close the beach, right? Which is going to lead us to our big, Act Two um, climax, which is the 4th of July, everybody
Yep.
arriving on the ferries, the kids pretending to be the sharks, and then the irony of Chief Brody having his kids put the boat in the pond, sort of on the other side of the bridge. In this little inlet, and of course that's where the shark ends up going, right? Um, and then
Also, it's I mean, great moment where she's like, "Don't let them, like, let him be in the boat." And
yeah,
I'm with Brody. I'm like, man, I might be overprotective. I'm like, what? No, I wouldn't let him drink water for a couple of weeks. Like
yeah,
and then like, I can't believe they put him in the pond. It just blows my
right,
mind. But
yeah,
again,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
from the helicopter. I'm a
Or just
byproduct of the helicopter
left him
parent.
yeah.
unsupervised in the pond. Like there was no adults around. Like it was just
Yeah.
like,
Well, again, different
we're gonna go to
time
the
back
beach.
Oh
then.
You
yeah,
go
I mean
play in
that
the
is definitely
pond.
my life. I mean,
Yeah.
my time era, like, yeah, I mean, just go play in the pond, nothing wrong with that. Obviously there is a shark but
That's the
they
part.
have
That's the
this
part where it's
illusion
like,
that the bridge will protect them, right? And that the shark won't
yeah.
go into those waters. And of course that's a mistaken belief, but yeah. Um,
Yeah. So I was gonna say, would you say this is the end of Act Two when they go to Quint's house? Is that
That's probably
yeah.
at the beginning of it, right?
I would, yeah, I would say that
Is
the
the
climax, of course, is just sort of the whole thing where the guy is killed by the shark, and then
Yeah.
the kid is okay, and then I think we sort of resolve a little bit of Act Two. We finish Act Two at the hospital,
Oh,
so.
okay.
So to me, Act Two ends when the mayor signs the
yeah.
whatever the paper allowing them to hire Quint, the approval to hire Quint, and that ends Act Two, and then the beginning of Act Three is them then going to Quint and hiring him, and then we're gonna go on our adventure here.
Sidebar.
There's that interesting moment in the pond, isn't there, where like it almost feels like the shark spares his son, right? Kind of moment.
Yes, there is a
And
moment where the kid is in the water and there's actually
Oh,
just a flying camera. The camera sort
yeah.
of flies right past him and it kind of suggests a POV of the shark
Yeah.
having
well,
swum by him.
and then
Yeah.
at the end, Brody like looks out, like is like we end that scene on this like him just staring out past the bridge, and so it almost just kind of felt like this
Man,
moment
what
where
a great shot.
he's like it almost feels like this moment where like the shark is toying with him, or like the shark. Obviously,
It
I don't think
targeted his
the
son
movie
kind of
is
thing.
no, but like it's spare.
Well,
It's
yeah.
like it was
That's what I mean.
like look what I could like. It almost just feels like this moment where the shark like and him are having this moment where they see each other, and it's kind of like I'm coming for you. It's
That shot
interesting.
is a weird shot that goes flying by his son because I think without that shot you don't have that feeling. And I think the general idea is he attacked one guy and ate him, and he got his meal for the day, so he doesn't need to go after the kids. Now, of course, that's going to get interesting, and I'll look forward to talking about the choices that the shark makes in Acts 3 and Acts 4. But
Oh
uh,
man. Didn't even think
uh,
about his choices. Um,
No,
well,
yeah,
just that shot you're talking about, Daniel, where he's looking, and it's kind of like it's framed by the bridge, and like it's like a tunnel.
yeah.
It's like
yeah,
he's looking into a tunnel to hell. Like what is out? It's like an abyss. What is out there? And
right.
it's like it's like the first claustrophobic shot of the ocean we've seen in the whole movie.
But
Um,
but you're right. It does give that sense almost that the shark is making choices, and it sort of feels weirdly personal.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't tell whether they meant it or not, but I agree that shot really does sort of suggest that the shark sort of swam by the kid without eating him, and then it makes you wonder, well, why did the shark do that? And then what
Well,
does that mean for
and it
Brody and the shark,
and because of the end where it kind of feels like this is the smartest shark we've ever known. Like
Right.
at the end, I mean, it's clearly the shark has a vendetta against them. It wants to destroy them in their boat, and it's not really about food. And so like
Yeah.
Okay, I get it
it
at that
just it
point.
kind of when you and I guess probably knowing that at the end, knowing that's kind of how it plays out, maybe that makes it kind of self-fulfilling that now watching it again, I'm like, oh, like is this the first moment that the shark makes its intelligence known in a way, and it's kind of like it almost is like I don't. Is the shark being like, I don't want your son, I want you. You're the one I want. You
He's
know what I
like
mean?
luring
This
him
is
out
personal.
to go chase
This is
him. Yeah, I don't
personal. You
know.
know, like
Isn't like Jaws 2 like the mom or like I'm gonna go kill Brody? Maybe I'm making that up in my head, but
I
isn't
think
isn't
I haven't seen any of the rest, but I think
I
there
haven't
is
either.
something there. Yes,
I want to see Jaws
I-
16 is what I want to see, which is the film that was teased in Back to the Future. I've always wanted to see that one, the
that's
VR
great.
3D one. And so yeah, well, also like, what's this movie? I think this is right. It's rated PG or is it rated G
PG,
or
surprisingly. Like I
PG?
know when that came out, I was
Well,
like PG, huh?
yeah, I mean back then though the rating system was so different. I
But
mean
don't they
like in
update
the
it?
yeah.
well, they did. I mean, eventually, it's become this huge political thing, and like it makes a lot of it makes not sense. And the people who control it don't make any sense, I should say. But there's like even good documentaries about that. But yeah, anyway, that's fascinating. That's PG. You see limbs. You see basically a naked woman the very first 5 minutes.
Well,
And
I mean,
anyway,
There
the
was no
silhouette of
PG-13
one.
was the big thing.
yeah,
Oh,
okay, okay.
Although ironically it was Spielberg who basically forced the creation of PG-13 when he made Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom because he
because of the
wanted
heart.
that because he wanted that movie to be accessible to kids, to teenagers. And the ratings board was like, there's too much, we can't rate it PG. So we sort of somehow managed to get a PG-13 rating.
Was R invented then? Was there PG and R?
Yeah, R existed, but
Okay,
to have an Indiana Jones movie that was 17 and over only, or with the accompaniment of adults was not going to work. So a
Kalima.
compromise was needed, and PG-13 was the compromise. Yeah,
Interesting.
Gotcha. So we're at an hour and 6 minutes mark, hour and six
yeah,
minute mark. We're at Quinn's house, and at the hour and 12 minute mark, they set sail for Jaws slash Bruce. Um, and of course, we get a nice little foreshadowing here of compressed air of
yeah.
Yep.
Brody almost, blowing the place up, according to Hooper.
The first one.
And
We get another one later.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
And this is our first encounter, and he gets away. Bruce gets away.
Yeah, I do want to just spend a minute because you said from 66 to 72, so we've got basically 6 minutes where they're hiring Quint, and there is a lot
Yeah.
going on there in
Sure.
terms of
Yep.
sort of debating with Quint, sort of who gets to go on the boat and who's in charge, and Hooper, kind of having to prove his credentials to Quint, who's very skeptical of the young
Yeah.
rich kid.
The
Who's going to
college
be,
boy. What
yeah,
he made reference into like what these college educated kids do today.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, so, um, so yeah, um, so we have a lot of that, and then we have Brody's wife coming to see him off, right? And so we do get a pretty emotional moment. She's pretty scared for him, when they go out
For sure.
and get on the boat. But yeah, then we get them on the boat, and they're actually on the boat for a while, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel in my notes I've got an hour and 12 is when they set sail, and it's not until um, an hour and 21 minutes before the shark appears
Mm-hmm.
for the first time. So we're on the boat for close to 10 minutes, in terms of them waiting on the shark, Hooper continually having to prove himself to Quint, just sort of everything kind of getting set up. Um, but yeah, obviously they fail to get the shark, and of course we get sort of
The famous line
the
too.
famous line,
Yeah.
you're going to need a bigger boat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
From Hooper, and that sort of in a way, I guess I say the shark appears, but between that 112 and 121, the shark is around. We just don't fully see the shark. I think it's at
Is
that
it
81
implied
minute
it's
mark where
around?
we sort of really see the shark. I think that's when um I think that's that moment when he's chumming and the shark comes
Comes
out of
out.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
water. So up till then, the shark has been around. It's just we've only seen its back or its fin or whatever, you know.
And that's another moment where I almost it maybe it's supposed to be a jump scare. It doesn't really feel like one, and maybe that's just
The
somewhat due
chum
to
part?
the yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel jump scary to me because maybe because it feels so telegraphed, like
It's slow.
with the frame, with him throwing like he's literally trying to lure the shark. So you're
Yeah.
expecting the shark to come. That's not a surprise when he shows up. I mean, it is somewhat just because you didn't literally know, but like all of the
Well,
movie is
it's
saying
actually
the shark's about to show up
it's
right over
kind of
here in the
set up
frame.
as a quiet moment, which is
It
weird, right?
is.
Because none of the other
Yes.
characters see the shark, right?
Yes.
And sort of back to your earlier point, it's like this moment between Brody and the shark because the shark sort of comes out of the water and then goes back in. And by the time Brody calls the other people, like he's just sort of frozen, you know?
Well, and I mean, I guess he's eating the chum on the surface of the water is the reason the shark surfaces. But it is like one of those odd moments where you're like, yeah, he's just looking him in the eye one more time. Like, I'm coming for you. You
Yeah.
know, it is
Well, I
interesting.
think also you got to keep in mind, I never jumped watching this movie as a kid, but when I saw it in the theater and do you see that head for the first time for the human body
Mm.
underwater, I jumped. And same thing with Indiana Jones, like movies, watching them like old movies in theater, it's like watching the movie for the first time ever. I've never been afraid of Alien my whole life. Watching the movie theater by yourself, it's like, oh, something's different now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I've seen
Yeah.
Alien 1,000 times. So anyway, I think that's some of it, but I like it. I like it's just, it's, I don't know. It's a famous shot for a reason. I mean, it
Yeah.
just,
No,
I like the
it's
moment.
good. It's just it's almost a little bit like I think that's what's interesting. You're right. Like they get on the boat and there's like 10 minutes or so of like just no signs of the shark. Like you know, it in a way it feels like I mean this is Act 3, right? This is when usually everything's starting to really heat up, and it kind of has this moment where it's like you know it's like surprising you with and it's like again it's perfect tension. It's like you know what we should do when everyone expects a shark, he doesn't show up, right? It's the best way to make you just you're only thinking about the shark because he's not there almost.
Yeah.
Well, they
But then
do
when he
go
shows up, it is
like,
just kind of this like moment, and then he backs up quietly and he says, "I think we need a bigger boat." And so it is like this soft tension moment. It's not the shark
Well,
comes
actually,
out and
those are
tries
two
to bite his
different
hand
moments.
off, right? Like it's not that. It's the shark surfaces for a second. He's the only one that sees it. He backs up and says the famous line. I'm not criticizing. I don't think it's bad. I think it's interesting. I think it's like
Yeah.
there's a deft touch here that again feels like you maybe there's a different version of this movie that's more tropey that doesn't do it that way, and it's
well,
still otherwise the same.
they do take a lot of time kind of realistically setting up how they're going to catch it,
They
like the
do.
mechanics of the boat, the buoys there. I mean, like ropes, those kind of things, versus something like top of my head, the Meg, where it's like as soon as they got on the water, the shark would be like after them, right? It'd be
Right.
like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it takes a while to build up, and yeah, and of course we keep building up, and so we do see the shark, we see the shark fin, you know, and we do fire the first barrel into it in the third act, and we do have some of the chase and stuff. I am going to say something which might be a little controversial, which is
Uh-oh.
um, it's kind of ironic to me that in some ways, you know, the Jaws theme is one of John Williams' most famous and, you know, iconic and of great, you know, sort of musical moments. I'm not a fan of some of his music in the second half of the mu movie. There is a little bit when they're on the chase of it's almost too light, you know, there's sort of
It feels like an
this
adventure film.
yeah, but
I put
it's
at
like
an
sort of
hour and
this
20.
like a
I put
little
the first buoy goes off on him. I
yeah.
said there's a tone shift, and I said there's a tone shift. It's like we're chasing the shark, and it's like a swashbuckling adventure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
almost a little too light. It almost like it
Yeah,
loses sort of a bass and it's kind of I
yeah,
forget whether it's sort of light horns like clarinets or whether it's strings, but it feels a
Yeah.
little light. And then also he brings in the motif of Quint's singing of
Yeah.
My
Uh-huh.
Fair Spanish Lady, and he turns that into part of the score. And it to
I
me,
like that part
it's just a
personally, but
little, I don't know, it feels odd, it takes away, it's too light to me. It loses the sense of how scary this should be. Yeah. And I just wish he'd kept like, even if he wanted that swashbuckling feel, just a little darker undertone. I mean, I'm not a music expert, but
I
some
agree.
sort of bass line or something that
yeah,
kind of
it
reminded
could
me
have
of,
hit a minor note at the end just to sour it a little
yeah,
bit, but
Yeah, don't
yeah,
go.
exactly.
Um, I think this is also another example of why Spielberg is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, four quadrant director. Like he just,
mm,
even though I agree, I wrote it in my notes. That's how much it stuck out to me, the music, the tone shift, and that, I think I attributed the tone shift to the music. But like
yeah,
this movie has kind of like adventure, horror.
Yeah,
It's funny in places.
right.
I mean, it's like it's a four quadrant. It's for everybody. It's something
Yeah,
for everyone, and that's really hard to do. And
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I agree that the tone has totally shifted. For some reason, I enjoy it. I enjoy the tone shift. To me, it's like this kind of like, oh, I didn't
they're on the
expect to
offensive
like
now.
feel
I like
positive
it
in a
in terms of
moment and like,
what the plot is doing. To me, it's just the musical tone sort
Sure.
of is a little off in terms of,
yeah. I mean,
and maybe
He
if
was
it
he
was
was still a
supposed to,
baby then.
no, I hear
Williams
you.
was
I
a
mean, I just
baby.
think to me, there's something effective about it in that it almost makes you think they're all going to get out alive for a minute,
well, yeah, I think
right?
if I'm going to defend it, I agree. It's almost a sense of that the characters don't
False
fully
security.
understand what they're getting into. It's like, we're going on a little adventure and we're going to kill the
Yeah.
shark, and it's really not the
Reminds me of
case.
Jurassic Park, like the early parts of Jurassic Park
Well,
music.
another four quadrant movie.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
got
Spielberg,
wonder
John
and it's got
Williams. Yeah.
horror
yeah.
and it's funny and it's got adventure. It's the
And
same. Like
man versus
he's
nature.
the master of it. He's the master of
Again,
it.
man versus
Yeah,
nature.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
But of course they sort of fail, right? So the shark kind of gets away, and so then we have our famous drinking scene, where we're comparing scars, and then we have our super dramatic moment where Quint tells us the story of the
Yeah.
USS Indianapolis and that he was a sailor on the ship.
I was
The only
doing
thing
the
that doesn't
math. I
make
was
sense is
like,
why he had the tattoo removed. I don't understand why
it's
he
too
would get the
painful for
tattoo.
him
Yeah,
to
too
think about.
traumatic, I think.
Too
Yeah.
I guess
traumatic.
so, but he just doesn't
Is
seem like the kind of character that. I mean, he just told this story to two dudes he just met yesterday. I don't think it's that traumatic.
a little movie logic here, I guess, but
I mean, it makes sense because it sets up the reveal, right? Like it's like, oh,
well, they've
what's
also
this
been
guy
drinking.
dude?
They've also been drinking a little bit,
They've been
and
drinking
You're
and
right. I
they've
mean,
gone
I
through
get
some
it.
stuff together, but
It
it's
felt
maybe a little
wouldn't
rushed
you
in
like
terms
want to
of,
keep
I get
that for
it.
like all your
I'm
brothers
not.
you lost? Like, wouldn't that somewhat?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's just
I don't know.
that's the typical war reaction that I'm used to with like these kinds of characters on
but
screen.
of
So it
course
just
we
felt
need it from a
slightly
plot perspective, right?
That's
Because,
why.
because
it
Arn
felt
says
plot
USS
motivated. It
Indianapolis.
felt plot motivated.
Yeah.
That's the part of it where it's like,
Maybe, yeah, I agree.
this
I
is
get you.
Yeah.
weird, a little slightly.
I get you. What do you guys think? I mean, like,
Is
obviously,
this
Bruce was talking about like the political undertones throughout this movie, like capitalism, the mayor, and then like livelihood versus other things. This one is interesting. I this one's like the folly of war. Like, is war worth it? You know we did this thing, and I say that because at the end of it, he says, "Well, at least we dropped the bomb. Like we all did this thing together, and we all died." But hey, at least we accomplished our mission. But like he says it like it wasn't worth it. Like seeing these people, my friends die was not worth going to war.
I didn't read this as war commentary or political commentary on war. I just read it as this is the perfect way to make us, for one, fear the shark more right now, and for two, kind of set up Quint's authority and
But
kind of
also,
like,
this comes out in like what 75, so this is on the heels of Vietnam or the Vietnam War. So it is very like
I
this is
mean,
very much
maybe so,
like,
maybe it is.
hey,
I
we
just,
don't want to. There's a camp of like we need to be in Vietnam. Other camp is like we're protesting heavily. So
Yeah, I
it's
don't
like,
know. Because
but
World War II has always been a more,
everyone kind of
sure.
agrees we should have done
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
so I'm
It's not
not
a
sure I saw it
controversial
sort of
war.
as a anti-war moment, but I do see it in a number of ways. I mean, one, we didn't have this language then, but Quint is a member of the greatest generation, right? So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
first of all, we see what he experienced versus what these other guys have experienced, and they've thought he's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
get both sides of that coin, right? We sort of understand why he's crazy because he went through this horrible experience, but we also understand, oh, he has lived through things we have never lived through before.
Yeah.
He has been through a different kind of world than we have. I also think it's a big setup for the final act because
Yeah.
So
Quint is going
tragic.
to lose his
Yes.
mind trying to kill this shark, and I think we needed a motivation for why
Even the
he
life
crushes the
jacket moment,
radio and
you
why
know.
he won't abandon the mission and why he is willing to,
Yes.
basically go down and get swallowed because he will do anything he can to try to kill this shark because in essence he hates sharks because of what
Yes.
happened to him. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that to me is it's the reason he is the way he is. I feel like if we don't get
Yes.
this scene, I don't really like Quint. I mean, like Quint almost becomes like up to this point, he's somewhat annoying to like our protagonists and and I think we're more aligned with Hooper too at this point in the movie too. He's like protagonist B, and so he's deriding them, he's insulting them, he's telling them how useless they are, blah 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 blah. And so this is the moment where you're like, oh, I like Quint now. And I personally already kind of liked him just because he was a fun character. But like, this is the moment where you're like, okay, everything he's done and doing, who knows? I might have done the same thing. So I feel like it's powerful because it makes his character in some ways like the centerpiece of the act until he dies. Like it's his act.
Well, yeah, I think there's a few things too. Every character, I think at different points is comic relief. Early on, Hooper with all of his looks. I think in Act Three, in a lot of ways, Brody is a little comic relief because he's so like not used to the boat and he doesn't know what to do. I mean, you're not laughing out loud or anything, but they also get their serious, heroic moments. And in a way, Quint has been also very much comic relief with his constant singing, and half the time you can barely understand what he's even saying. And you do think he's a little nuts, and you're like, should they really be trusting that he's the one who's going to bring this whole thing home? And so then he gets his moment, and then you have this moment that you take him seriously and you understand, like you said, who he is, and he gets his serious moment. I mean, he'll get another one, obviously, in his death. He sort of goes down fighting. And also when we get into Act Four, he's got a great moment where he, in essence, the boat is sinking, and he turns to Hooper and he's like, "Okay, tell me what you've got." And so there's this sense of him being willing to say, "Okay, my methods didn't work, but I'm not so obstinate that I'm going to go down and without a fight, So, hey, kid, give me what you got,
Can we
So he does
talk real
have some of those
quick?
moments,
Well,
but clearly his big moment is the Indianapolis speech.
well, and I feel like if you take that out, his character almost that almost makes like I know you called him kind of a movie character. I mean, yes, in that he's just eccentric, but almost to me, he feels realistic because of the story. Like, if you take that out, then yes, he's just Captain Ahab that hunts sharks, right? Like, and like even
It gives
like
him depth. I
and
agree.
when you see him at first, like
Yeah.
his introduction is a bit on the nose, scraping his fingernails on the chalkboard. the amount
Talking about a horrific moment, by the way.
I don't remember this happening in this movie, but I have seen this moment redone so many times in so many things, like the scratching at something to draw the attention to the guy in
Let's
the
stop
corner.
talking about it. It's already
But like, and then when they show up to hire him, the only thing he hunts is sharks. He doesn't do any other kind of hunting
Well,
or fishing.
it's another horde trope. It's the wise sage that you go to for more information about, even though Hooper is, but he's got like hands experience with killing them, So
No, and I agree, but like it's like that story. Then you're like, oh yeah, like I bet there really were people like this, like that came out of that incident and just
for sure.
turned their trauma into hunting animals or something. Like I don't know. It really makes his character just not only stand out because of just it's an amazing speech and amazing acting, but stand out because like it makes his character just much more likable and enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah.
To align,
Absolutely.
easy to
And
align
in a
with.
way, it is that whole thing, because it starts off funny,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
even in its funniness, even in the comparison of the scars and the drinking, they've been through enough together that they begin to bond, right? And bonding moments require a lot of things. Part of it is they've been through something, and now part of it is they're getting drunk together and they're comparing scars. And of course, that is what leads to him telling the story. But him telling that story is the glue to the bond, right? It is the thing that really brings these three characters, and in a way, I mean, it's not quite the same, but they are now like three
Brothers.
more
yeah,
sail yeah, they're
yeah,
brothers, and they're
yeah,
three more sailors on the Indianapolis in a way because of
yeah,
what's
yeah,
going to
yeah,
happen in Act 4. Like they're going to
yeah,
experience again what a version of what they experienced,
yeah.
obviously more compressed, but yeah, so it really is the glue, and it really brings those characters together, and sets us up for the final act.
Especially him and Hooper, and I love how like Hooper was already aware of this incident, and so it's almost this like you're seeing
College
Hooper like
boy.
look at Quint like he's like a god almost now. Like
Yeah,
Well, I think the unsung hero in that scene, I mean, obviously Quint, his acting's amazing, but it's Hooper just sitting
yes,
there looking at him. His
right.
facial, Richard Dreyfuss, it's like, holy hell, you could just look at
That's what I'm
someone and
saying.
act your ass
Constantly
yeah,
through the
off.
movie, his
yes,
reactions
Yeah.
to things, whether it's his
steal
skepticism
show.
or his eye rolling, or here, whether it's his admiration and like, oh
Yes,
shit,
because
like
it's such a tone
I
shift for how he's
totally have
seen him.
changed my view of this
Yes,
guy the moment I heard him say USS Indianapolis,
yes,
yeah,
it's so
great
good,
stuff.
so good.
Very
Um,
good stuff.
Got
so
shivers.
this is a weird part of the movie, and so for
Yeah.
me, this is the Act 3 climax. Um, in combination, so he gives the speech, and then right after, they sort of are like, holy shit, and they're sort of processing the story. The shark attacks. The shark attacks the boat and starts ramming the boat, right? Um, and this is kind of interesting because when you look at the movie from a broad scope, and if you define acts by changes in goals, right? And or you could do the same with sequences, but each goal or each act is defined by a new goal. And if the Act 3 goal is to go kill the shark, and that's halfway through the movie, it feels like it doesn't change in a way, right? It really feels like the whole second half of the movie is one act and one goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there is kind of a shift, and certainly his speech feels climactic, and it feels like it propels us into the last act of the movie. But it's sort of, well, what is the change of goal? How does the goal change? And
Well,
I
it sets up the stakes of their relationship, for one.
It certainly does, yes. I think the other thing that happens though, and it's subtle, but it's clever, is that the shark is attacking them.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're on the
yeah.
First of
defensive.
It
all,
almost
it's
becomes survive more
Yeah,
than
that's
anything.
it.
exactly,
It's his
exactly.
drive.
It's
Find
to
it. You could
survive.
say it's find the shark, then to survive the shark.
But
If
the
you wanted to
but in
define it.
the in Act 3, the shark isn't attacking. They are after the shark, and they fail at that goal to kill the shark, right? Um, and of course, it's great timing. Right after he has told the story of the Indianapolis, the
Right.
shark attacks them, and now, yes, of course, they have to kill the shark to survive. But the goal does change into surviving the shark attacking them. And you kind of mentioned that earlier, Daniel, that now it's like the shark is after them. The shark
It's
is
personal.
it's
It's
personally, he wants to
vendetta.
kill all of them. Um, and
And he
and
knows how many are on the boat. He's counting. And
uh,
He is counting.
yeah.
He's got a ledger. He's got,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it is interesting because on if you look at it broadly, it feels like the second half is all one act and one goal. But I think when you really get into the fine points, yeah, there is a shift. It is now about survival rather than killing. and and the tables turn a little bit. I mean, on the
Well,
characters, obviously the shark kind of sort of already knew that, that his capabilities, but yeah,
well,
now it's like, holy shit, he's gonna sink this boat, right?
and this is also the exact moment the tone shifts back, right?
Yeah,
Becomes a horror thriller again. It's
right.
not an adventure movie. It is what you at first you were thinking is each character dying one by one, almost, right? Like, and so like I do think it's interesting that like you're right. It kind of gives us this third act of let's go do this thing. We're on an adventure. We're the hunters.
Right.
The humans are the apex predators. We can do this.
Yeah.
And then they kind of all get together. And they're like, there was this one time where sharks ate a bunch of people, and they're like, oh
Right.
wait, what if sharks eat us and we don't hunt shark? And then the shark attacks.
And then the shark, exactly. Yeah, and that's great. It's great screenwriting. It's great storytelling. I also want to point out one other thing, which of course one of the criticisms maybe of the movie from, again, maybe from like an environmental or biological point of view, is this idea that the shark, you know, sort of has a grudge and is going after them, and this idea that
It's a
generally
man eater, right? It has a
animals,
taste
yeah,
for
they don't
human
really do
flesh. It
that. They
won't
hunt for
stop.
food. They don't do
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it's really fascinating. I don't know if you guys have followed this, but really starting like last year and this year, orcas have started attacking boats.
Yeah.
And so in a
The
way,
irony.
Well,
the
and
movie
orcas are
is
incredible.
like,
They're one of the smartest
yeah,
whales that
it's like kind of
exist.
prescient in a
Or
way,
animals in the
like
fit.
predicting that, and no one really understands what's going on with the orcas, but there is like almost this sense of like,
Who
the
knew?
animals are revolting against the humans, and we're like, we're tired of what you have been doing to us and our environment, and we're coming after you.
They know it's the 50th anniversary of Jaws.
And well,
That's
and
what
Yeah,
they
who knew
know.
between
exactly.
this,
The orcas
between
are like,
Jaws and Free
okay.
Willy? Free Willy was the actual horror
Yeah.
movie.
One of my
Free
favorite
Willy
deleted
had the
scenes.
actual killer on screen,
Um,
One of my
not
favorite deleted
Jaws.
scenes of
Free Willy.
Jaws is when Jaws is looking through binoculars at Brody and them, and he's like, "I'm gonna get you guys," So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I think yeah, I think it's great. I think the male and defensive. It just makes it more interesting too because instead of them literally chasing him with like the triumphant adventure music, now we're full on horror survival. And
Yeah.
And I think the
again, it's
genre
just
affords it that, right? Like,
yeah,
because this is at the end of the day not an adventure movie, it is kind of that like, no, this is at the end of the day, it's you versus a hopeless endeavor task,
Yeah.
right?
And it's great because, it's sort of we get this climax that I've got around the 94-minute mark when the shark is attacking the boat. And then pretty quickly we cut to the next morning, which is always also a nice indicator of a shift to,
Mm.
something new. It's the next morning. And almost immediately I mean, the shark is attacking, but one of the first things that happens is that Quint destroys the radio. I've got that at the 98-minute mark. So it's just 4 or 5 minutes after he's been telling the story, he goes and destroys the radio. And, of course, Brody loses his mind, but we understand that moment a little better now, in the sense that there is sort of this
It's
crazed
Ahab and
sense
Moby
of
Dick.
like, I
Yeah.
have to get this shark and we are not calling for help and this is personal.
Ryder died. Yeah,
Yeah.
It is,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
It's interesting how much there is like Moby Dick parallels to a lot of, especially Quint. I mean, he feels like they said, let's base this guy after Captain Ahab.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get a good 12 to 15 minutes basically of them shooting the barrels into him, the trying to repair the engine, the boat slowly falling apart, Quint, firing up the engine full bore to chase after, and burning out the engine basically, and then that you can almost divide this act into two sequences, and then when the boat is sinking and we get to like with 10 minutes left in the movie, Quint's like, okay, what have you got, Hooper? And it actually, I was surprised at how late that happened,
Yeah.
because
It's
there
like
is a
10 minutes
lot
left.
of action in that last 10 minutes
Yeah.
from the time he says that, because he's still alive, like I guess
Yeah.
in my head, I was almost thinking that his death would be the Act 3 climax. and then everything with Hooper would be sort of like the last 30 minutes. But no, like Quint is
Yeah.
alive even into the last 10 minutes. He
There's only
dies
2 minutes of
5
credits.
minutes before the end of the movie,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so much happens in that last 10 minutes of the movie where they lower the cage and then he's not in the
Yeah.
cage and they pull it up and the shark is stuck and the boat is sinking. Like, I mean, it is a great action-packed 10 minutes of the movie for sure.
It feels like that last 10 minutes is what I almost thought the last act was. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly,
Like in my
exactly, because
memory.
there's so much
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happens, you know. It was like
Well,
I had the
I
same
do
thought. I was
want to.
like, Quint must die at the end of the third act, and then all of that stuff with Hooper and Brody is the last 25 or 30 minutes. But no, it's all in 10 minutes.
I did not understand the logic of burning out the engine. Why did he do that? Like, was this just also like, I'm going down, like, I just want us to die? Like, it just didn't feel like,
I think it's just
but wouldn't being able to like keep chasing I mean, like, I don't know. Like, it just felt that was one moment where I'm like, I don't quite see the logic even from the crazy perspective.
I think it's a mix of I know my shit better than anybody. To Hooper, there's a mix of that,
Sure. Yeah.
and there's a mix of like yeah. I mean, going down with the shit, but it's like it's the very narrow-minded view of like you're mine, like it's Moby Dick, like you're
Yeah.
mine, like I'm going to get you right now. There's nothing that's going to stop this moment from happening, and it's a combination of all those things, and
Yeah,
it is what it
and
is.
because I think in the end you have to think about the ways that Quint is trying to kill the shark, and his main weapon is the boat, right? And yes, he sabotages the boat at the end, but it's his last gasp, right? It's like, okay, we've got these barrels and the shark is still pulling, and we have to, like, if we're going to beat it with the boat, we have to push the boat all the way to its limit. And but he still believes in doing that he's going to be able to beat the shark, right? And he fails, right? He's not able to do it. But yeah, there is a little bit of that crazed, like, beat the shark at all costs, which we've seen with the radio, and then I think is echoed by the pushing of the engine past its limits.
Well, the idea, right, is he says bring him to the surface, but it's to tire him out, right? It's to make the shark tired from the force of the weight of the
Right,
buoys
right.
and the
Yeah.
boat. And yeah.
Yeah, at
Um,
first it's catching up with the shark so that and then it's like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna try to tire out the shark by
yeah.
pushing the boat as hard as we can.
Yeah, because he also says, like, he mentions, he can't handle 3 barrels, which I'm like,
Right,
he just handled your
Yeah.
boat, dude. I'm
Yeah.
not sure
right,
you
Yeah.
understand.
yeah.
But yeah, the idea I think was to kind of make him tired and go more to the surface instead of deeper.
But I
Um,
think overall, yes, Quint is past the point of thinking rationally and being realistic about their chances. And if he was thinking clearly, he would know that this isn't going to work. And clearly, the other two characters know that it's not going to work. But he's sort of beyond, he's going to push.
Logic. Yeah.
Yeah, he's beyond logic now.
and because of his folly, he's the one who dies of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
feels like
absolutely.
bitter. Like you don't like, it's like, it almost feels like, again, in a modern day version, an executive would have said, no, don't kill him. We need him for a sequel. Right. like he's one of the most interesting characters here. You don't kill him. You know what I mean? But it does also feel like someone had to die to kind
Yeah.
of make it all feel like the stakes were real in the first
Right.
place. That it wasn't like imaginary stakes.
Right.
And he's it's like this was his destiny. He was always meant to die by sharks like that.
Yeah.
Once he came back and became only a shark hunter, this was his only way he was going to go. Whether it was
There's there's a
one in
final
5 years.
destination view of his fate, right? Like
Sure,
he
yeah.
escaped his fate on the Indianapolis, and eventually fate's going to come back around, and he will die by shark, right?
No, he definitely helped. It didn't help his attitude, the way he approached the shark hunting. It aided in his destruction. But no, I mean it's also just like the goriest moment, kind of the most horrific moment of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just where we see the most gore. When you're seeing him like bleeding out of his mouth and he's getting like
That's
ripped
the
in
worst
half.
part.
Or
Yeah.
no,
His
the worst
mouth.
part to me is when later the shark attacks and you see like flesh hanging out the shark's teeth.
Yeah.
When he's attacking, bro. Like, like that's the first part. I'm like, holy shit, this feels horrific. Yeah. This is a horror, right? Like we haven't really gotten this much on screen up to this point. And of course, it's the climax of the whole movie. That's when you should up the stakes and up the ante all around. But it is the moment where I'm like, okay, this is, I'm actually feeling the fear of this horror now.
Yeah.
Right?
We should take this moment to also point out just sort of the portrayal of the shark throughout the movie, and of course there is a little bit of hiding the shark for quite a while, which is sort of a classic trope, where you let people's imagination sort of fill in. But also, it's kind of interesting, and going back and watching it, like, it's famous for the mechanical shark and the fact that the mechanical shark sort of kept breaking down and they were having problems with it. And obviously when the shark jumps onto the boat right before he eats Quint, it's the worst looking shot from a special effects point of view. And clearly it doesn't look like a real shark. But it also goes to point out how often the shots of the shark either do look real, or, you watch the credits and there is clearly real shark footage intercut into the movie.
There's shots of it where it's clear, like, in fact, there was one shot where like the shark is like tied up in the cage after Hooper's escaped.
I was wondering, is there bigatures and like,
did they just tie a real shark to a cage and then just
I don't know. I mean,
thrashing. It was like thrashing around wildly. I was like, that is not a robot shark.
Even the shots of the shark with the air tank stuck in the side of its mouth, like, it looks real to me. I mean, it looks like a real shark. I don't know how.
It helps that sharks naturally move like robots. You know what I mean? Like they just slowly open and close their mouths.
And they do have kind of those dead eyes.
Glass eyes,
But overall, besides that one shot where the shark goes on, and maybe there's one other that looks slightly fake, it's actually quite impressive overall how realistic it all feels with the shark.
Yes, I agree, but especially for the time and just knowing what had even happened up to that point with terms of like special and practical effects.
Yeah, and like when it's attacking the cage that Hooper is in.
That part gets me. I'm like, well, that makes me
tense.
actually really suspenseful. And again, I was wondering during that too, is this like a normal size shark and it's like a bigatures, or is that, I don't know. I think what you're saying, Daniel, when he's flipping, that I think is a real shark.
It definitely, like I was like, that is like, why?
With
There's
the
no
bigature.
way they could have made a robot look like that. Like that would have had to have been CGI.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, like, would they like put like colored blood in there, like blue color blood, that way it blends with the ocean I was thinking like when he's flipping around with the boat in the cage there, because there's no blood in that moment. I was like, how are they getting the shark to do that anyway? I was thinking about it too.
I don't know.
So the hour and 51 minute mark is the shark cage moment, which is when Hooper kind of gets a pretty brave moment here going down with the shark. It's just a really intense scene. It's interesting too because after this moment you don't see Hooper till the end.
It's
Hooper
interesting
hides.
that the movie tells you he survived. Almost like I would have expected a modern horror movie to be ambiguous. We don't see him eat him, but we don't see him escape. Right? Like that would have been the normal thing to do with Hooper here, to set up his arrival being like a surprise more. But it is like one of those things where like, I don't know, like it doesn't bother me. Like it is one of those moments where I'm like, I think a modern take on this would have done that there with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously we have the sense he escaped. We don't know. I mean, we know that Brody doesn't know he's alive. So maybe there's even a sense of like,
he'll save him at the
putting
end.
us through too much, because we're killing Quint and now Brody's at risk, and knowing that Hooper is going to surface almost kind of makes that moment a little easier to take. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to put us through the ringer too much. I'm not sure.
Because if they hadn't done that, we would have been really aligned with that moment the cage comes out and it's empty and torn to shreds. Like we would have been feeling the same thing as the characters there, but we're not. It's just interesting. It's just an interesting moment where it's like, I wonder if there was a specific reason or if that's just kind of more of a modern sensibility in terms of how you do.
I think Bruce is right. Is that it was to soften when that the severity of Quint dying. I think it's what it is because I mean, if obviously you've seen the movie, you know Hooper survives, but also I think it is that. I think it's just to kind of like put that. I think it's like a subliminal thing where an audience member knows that it's happened. They're not really thinking about it because it's so crazy in that moment. But I think it's for that reason.
And
That's
we
my
and we
guess.
can't say for sure that we know that Hooper has survived. I
I
mean,
mean,
we've
it
seen him.
heavily implies he's hiding behind coral
Yes,
deep in,
yes,
and the shark
but
does not
then
seem to notice him at
we
all.
lose track of him for 10 minutes, and who knows what happened during that time. I agree. I think we generally heavily lean towards knowing that he's alive, but
It also shows that he's smart. I mean, we already knew that, but it's like he's hiding in a place the shark doesn't typically go or can reach,
yeah.
So I think it's a
Yeah.
little extra thing. Yeah, and then we get a cool, sweet ass one-liner. Um, Smile, you son of a kaboom, which is, but I
Yeah.
mean, just
It's
watching
great.
how I mean, just again, the tension and the shots and the staging of things, how the boat is slowly going down and how he's
Yeah.
getting closer and
Yeah.
closer to the water. It's a little like Pirates, like you imagine
Yeah.
today, the most recent is Pirates of the Caribbean of like the boats going lower and
Yeah.
how they're using blocking and the staging and stuff. It's just brilliant. I mean, like having a true showdown. Bruce or Daniel, this is like really what you're talking about the whole movie of the
Yeah.
sharks coming for him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking
And
you dead in the eye. I'm coming for you. I saved you for
Yeah, and even
last.
the fact that, he's afraid of the water and it's sort of like he's
this is
got to
it.
get the shot off before he gets into the
It's
water.
true.
I mean,
That's
regardless of
interesting.
even whether the shark will get to him in time, it's like we don't even know if he can swim. I guess, I mean,
And guns
I
usually
don't,
don't
we
work
don't
if they're
really know he can
wet.
swim because he's always holding on to something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how's he going to fire the gun?
Yeah.
Even if he has bullets, once he's just swimming in the water, like, so they're like the number of things that are all wrapped up in he's got to kill the shark
Yeah.
before the mast hits the water
Yeah.
is so great. And of course it's wonderfully unbelievable, but leads to such a great
So good.
explosive ending, literally.
Yeah. And then
It's
the ending
fantastic.
dialogue is just, it's cute in that way that like you feel like they just wanted to be kind of like cute and funny at the last moment of the movie. I feel like older movies sometimes did this where it's not like in a way it's almost a character moment that like he's not afraid of water and he's talking about it, but it's kind of just this throwaway little like, and now they're gonna paddle softly as friends back to shore, and I'm not afraid of water anymore. He's like, imagine that. Oh, what what if he
Yeah.
like
I
what he
used to hate
says.
the water. I can't imagine why. That's
Yeah,
the
like
line.
it's just this like, I don't know. That moment feels like a movie too. Like that's a moment where you're like,
For sure.
that's the bow. That's just this nice little pretty bow of just, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Although
Well,
we
it's
should
just
point out before that, we also have the moment where Hooper asks about Quint because he doesn't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that Quint has
Yes.
survived. And so we get this slightly emotional moment. But the movie is also clever because, overall we want to celebrate the ending. And so we acknowledge it. There's a moment, but we immediately go past it, and Brody's like, "Hey, do you think we can swim to shore on
Yeah.
the barrels or whatever?" And then off we go, and we end on the joke.
Well, it's funny. I feel like the idea of it like characters walking off and us not seeing them talk, but hearing them talk as they walk. That just feels like classic movie.
It's a
Yeah.
classic.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I love it. I love when they do that.
I do like just also. I mean, I know it's famous for this, so it almost feels like redundant, but just the camera work and cinematography in those last two acts is just like it does exactly what it did then to the audiences in terms of making you feel like you're on the boat, making you feel like you're right with them, and the tension, the rocking back and forth. It's just as effective as that now as it was back then, and it's just
When you see their feet like on the like
yes.
just their feet in like the water in the boat, it's
Well,
incredible.
there's so many shots. There's so many shots where I'm like, I bet they were just out here playing like I didn't have every one of these setups planned kind of thing, because like there's so many shots where it's just it's one tiny shot. There's a shot where like it's a shot on Brody and the reflection, the sharks, he's looking through a window, and in the reflection of the window, the shark's pulling one of the barrels, and just like these little moments where it's just like, that was a 2-second shot, and it probably took a long time to get. Like, I don't know. There's just all these moments where you're like, it's just a spectacle for the eyes at a technical level, as well as all this emotion and character and tension that we've been talking about. I will say
Yeah.
though, to me, the only two parts of the movie that are just like, that could have been better, objectively to me, is the weird fade, crossfade in Act 3 that like fades on the end of one of the lines of dialogue. I think it's one of Quint's lines. You guys remember what I'm talking about? There's like this crossfade that happens while they're on the boat, and I think it's in Act 3, that just fades us into another moment, and it just feels like there was another scene that they didn't have time for and cut, kind of moment. It's why I'm like, am I reading that right? It's because y'all didn't remember it all. But the
I've
other
always
moment,
hated fades, but
I mean, yeah,
I've gotten to a place where I see their value for sure.
well,
But I do hate
it's
them.
an awkward fade because it's fading, like the audio is fading out while a character is finishing a line. So it's not
Yeah.
it feels like a messy, we got to cut this scene for time. There's no other way to do this thing. And
Or
then the
there was
other one
something, yeah.
is
Yeah.
it feels the exact same way on the ferry ride. At the end of the ferry ride scene, the last shot is them coming back, and the mayor says, "Now take us back to shore." And it feels like a moment where there was a longer scene there, where they're on the way over, and the mayor's like, "All right, turn this around and take us back," as like this kind of way to flex his power. That like, we joined you on this ride. I know you're going this way, but now we'd like to go back. So it's going to turn around and go back, and then you can go. Like it was like, I don't know. It was just like, oh, I think there was an extra scene there. But
That fairy scene's perfect, Daniel. You're just wrong on that.
it is. The ending of it feels like something that was found in the edit versus planned.
Sure.
And I'm
No,
not
I
saying
agree.
that like
I
plenty
remember
of movies
noticing
do
that.
that and it works. It's just, again, if I'm gonna be like nitpicky, it's like those are the moments where he's like, okay, that was a fix, that's not what we planned. And just at times when you feel like you're fixing, not planning, there's just, it's just a slight moment where you realize you're watching a movie. That's all it is.
I mean, I'm kind of blown away just in the end. There's a shot where Brody is going like he's kind of walking around the edge of the boat again, and he's walking on the edge of the boat, and it does a reverse. It's like a close-up reverse of uh, Quint walking back with the harpoon, and you see the harpoon for like a fraction of a second, and like it's like basically in shadow, and it's framed around the light of Brody and the ocean behind him. But then like it just, I mean, it's like a second. And then Brody see Brody's face. He's like, "Oh, I'm walking back now because he's got a harpoon." It's like this. It's kind of comical, but also just brilliant. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I think
how many times like back then they could just like watch it on a monitor. They were just like, they were
Right.
shooting. You know what I'm saying? Like, how many times do they do that? Or they just, I don't know. It's just mind blowing to me. So,
Well, I just feel like at a beat analysis level, this movie must be exhausting to go through because it feels like in our midst of all these longer beats and sequences and acts, there's just like we said, like in almost consequential action, there'll be a beat of conflict and action and reaction. And a lot of times it is Hooper that's like the vehicle of this, like not he's doing something silently, but there's these beats of conflict and things happening constantly. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that again is a part of where it feels like we've maybe missed some of that in filmmaking, where it's like so many things are happening at once and they're all working, but we're just, you could miss something if you blink. But it's okay because you get the picture. But it's almost like the movie is willing to let you miss things if you're not paying complete attention, but they're there. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
this
it's
is this is
craft. I mean,
yeah.
we just don't have it anymore, man. We just don't. It's
We,
sad. It's honestly sad.
we still do. I mean, there are still Ryan Johnsons.
Is this
We
what it
still-
felt
we
like the
still
whole
get
time,
Knives
Bruce?
Out,
When we
right?
were in
We get
school, like
Knives Out still every
you
now and
knew
then.
more than us, and it was just like, oh, those poor souls. Like they'll eventually they'll get to where I'm at. I don't know.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, that's probably how Spielberg feels about, a lot of movies. Because
Yeah.
really, I mean, what you're talking about is Spielberg's blocking, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about beats that we get that aren't dialogue beats. They're blocking beats,
Yeah.
and the care that's going into where the characters are in relation to one another, and then how they're composed, and then how the camera moves in relation to them to give us information. I think is really rare these days to see that level of blocking and to see that care in where the camera is in relation to the characters, and shooting in depth, and then having that blocking mean something. And part of it, I think, is sort of this, part of it's a lack of care, part of it's sort of a lack of understanding of how to block anymore. Part of it is that blocking is expensive, and money isn't going towards blocking anymore because, you have to work out blocking. And just like I was talking about that example from The Sandman, I mean, it's a lot easier to just put two characters at either end of a table and then get coverage and shoot the whole scene from three angles on one character, three angles on the other, and cut it all together, boom, 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 and that's especially true in television.
Yeah.
Although some TV shows have gotten really expensive, like Game of Thrones, that feel like movies. But even in movies, I think a lot of directors aren't taking the time to do that level of blocking, and to
Yeah.
have those reveals and to have things happening in the foreground, middle, and background. It takes a lot of work. And I say expensive, and that's just expensive on set. It's also expensive in pre-production because you are having to do a lot more pre-production and working
Yeah.
things out, and planning how you're going to shoot things. And I think that is also expensive because you
Yeah.
need crew and you need people. And, I
Well,
think
and
for a
it's
lot
just,
of reasons, we've lost that in a lot of
yeah.
movies, that complex blocking that we used to see from people. And then, of
Well,
course, people like Spielberg still do it. And Fincher does it to some extent.
Yeah.
He's more precise with his camera than he is like super duper intricate with his blocking. But, there's some of that there with him.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about it 50 years later,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's a testament to, just the craft of a lot of the filmmakers back then and Spielberg himself. And,
Yeah. I think it's all,
you know,
the extras part too is like you can't do that kind of intricate blocking without a bunch of people in the
Exactly.
background, right? Like
Yeah.
that even, like I even think about like Oppenheimer. I really liked Oppenheimer, but there's almost a feeling that there was never that many people on screen or in a scene at a time together. Like it almost felt small at times to me.
Yeah, there's not really in a
And
lot of
like,
scenes in that movie.
and maybe
Yeah.
that's realistic. Maybe there weren't a lot of people around during those events or whatever, but it almost felt scaled down to a degree. And like that is part of what I miss too with these, like, the panning shot of having hundreds of people on a beach.
Beach.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time it took just to get those shots, just to get the extras to do what they're supposed to do and not look at like, that's a lot of work, and you need people that's their only job is to get out there and direct the extras and get them to do what they need to do. And so like as people that have made films and like thinking about that, like it makes sense why people want to film in the volume. It makes sense, why we're trying to take these shortcuts, especially when movies are struggling to be profitable at the box office. But at the same time, it's like kind of it's eating its own tail kind of thing, right?
Well,
In an effort to be more profitable, it's making itself less interesting, and because it's less interesting, less people are going to it, and it's just it is.
Well, more people than ever work on movies. It's just that they're all, at the visual effects houses and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a shift to where the crew is. Not to say that there still aren't large crews on set, but yeah, I mean, all the stuff you're talking about takes time and care. And, I mean, of course, there are still directors who take that time and care. George Miller with the Mad Max movie.
Brad Bird.
Ryan Coogler, Sinners, great movie, really like.
Yeah, yeah, he has a lot of old stabilities, but I wouldn't classify him still as like a Brad Bird or, but yeah, I mean, like, you're right, Daniel. This is because they are saving money up front, they're losing money in the back end, like over time and generations and whatever. And Sinners is a great example. I like Sinners. I think it's a good movie. I like the performances in it, blah blah blah. But it's not as good as the good stuff. I've said this a few times on the podcast now. It's like a window into like, oh, this is good, and like, we're gonna make it like the 93% Rotten Tomatoes. It's like, yeah, it's just you guys forgot what good movies are, and this is like, it's good. It's just not amazing or great.
Right.
You
Is
know
it
what
a
I'm saying?
classic? Are we going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Sinners?
Yeah, and well, I think people will. I think modern audiences are like, it is like a classic already, but like it's because you haven't watched Jaws. It's because
Yeah,
it's because you haven't watched The
I guess
Fugitive.
I don't know.
No. No,
I mean,
I think it's what it is. It's like, again, what was the movie we talked about? I brought this up last time. It might have been Oppenheimer or something, where it's like I like that movie a lot and I have a great time with it, blah blah blah. But it's still like it's not as good as some of these others movies. But people just don't watch movies or they don't experience what good movies used to be.
Okay, well, we have
You
to
know?
take a step back and realize we're trying to objectively classify art as good and bad, and the
I don't
downfalls
mean
and
to say
pitfalls
that.
that come with that.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I mean, I hear you in that, like, Sinners does not have Spielbergian camera work, right?
Well, I don't. They don't
Necessarily,
need
or
to.
like things
There's
like that. I
different
just
types of
think,
movies.
but
I'm not saying that.
I'm just saying, I think it's less common. Yes, it still does exist, I believe. And I do think there's going to be a lot of people that in 50 years will be celebrating Sinners, because even at the level of, like, when's the last time we had a vampire movie made for the Black community as like the target audience? So, like, even if it's not maybe for us or for other people, it will be for some people.
Vampires in Brooklyn. No,
Yeah. But you're right. I
I
mean, you're
like that
talking
movie,
about
actually.
different things, right? I mean, because there's
I'm not saying Spielberg is the end all be all blocking day. No,
no,
first of all,
but what we're talking,
I like it.
we're talking about movie making, we're talking about storytelling, we're talking about cultural and political relevance. I mean, and these are all things that are going to determine how a movie is received and how well it's remembered and why it's considered important. And I think part of what we're, maybe what you're saying, Donovan, is that the filmmaking part of the equation has maybe been lost to some extent. And of course, no one's going to say that people still aren't making awesome movies today that won't be considered classics in the future, but that part of the equation that's missing is that real care for the filmmaking side of things. And of course, one of the things we have to remember is that it's people like us, the true cinephiles, I think, who notice that loss the most, right? I mean, someone who just loves a good story is maybe gonna notice that in some sort of slightly intangible way, but they're not necessarily going to notice it in a concrete way. And they're going to watch another movie that's maybe, we'll just use your example of Sinners, that is not maybe from a strict movie making point of view doing what Spielberg does, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to have other resonances, right? That a popular audience is going to look at and go, this is important. Again, whether it's political, whether it's cultural, whether it's storytelling, whether it's great acting performances, there's a lot of things that are going to go into what's being remembered and how movies grow and change over time. But I agree with you that I think some of the care in certain aspects of technical filmmaking, like blocking, like really careful compositions, have been lost a little bit.
I'm just
I
curious.
like Sinners
Do you think
a lot.
what is
Yeah.
the last movie that came out that you think will be remembered because of its filmmaking? Like, that's
know.
the reason.
That's a hard question for
I
me.
mean, my
The
answer
Matrix. I
would be
don't
my
know.
answer would be Avatar, in a bad way, because I think I don't like what it's doing to filmmaking. But, like, as far as it's remembered more for its technical feats than its story.
Well, I mean, I already mentioned one, which is Mad Max Fury Road. I mean,
Sure,
the
that's another one. Yeah, that's a
filmmaking
good
in
one.
that
That's a
movie,
good one.
and that movie is what? It's over 10 years old now. It came out, what, 2010?
2015.
2015. Okay, so
It came out 2015.
so yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there are even more recent movies than that.
Or 2016.
And we're also talking Hollywood, by the way, and
Yeah.
I think we're talking about a sacrifice of filmmaking quality in Hollywood. There are still great filmmakers, foreign filmmakers, art cinema filmmakers who are taking care with how they're making their movies, and they're making beautiful, amazing movies. But we're focusing primarily on more popular culture oriented movies.
Yeah,
And maybe
blockbusters.
that's part of the thing. Sorry. Is that we're specifically losing some of that in Hollywood movies,
What's
because Hollywood's priorities have shifted somewhat.
we
Even
talk.
Spielberg has changed in his
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
aptitude of how he makes movies.
And also just maybe he's older and is more impatient.
Maybe.
I don't know. But I do think it's interesting. We talk about the classical Hollywood style as being this, like, this thing that emerged by decades of trial and error that just was what keeps butts in seats, right? And like, I know it's like we kind of look at that Hollywood style as like, oh, that was maybe the peak of the craft of filmmaker, or when the peak began, right? And like maybe we're past that. But I mean, I guess like the same theory applies to now, in that the Hollywood style is constantly changing, but it's being refined by the same process that derived the Hollywood method of filmmaking in the first place. You know what I mean? And so there is this thing of like, I don't know, it's interesting to look at it at that lens, to say, okay, if the Hollywood style was an organic thing that came about just because of how audiences reacted to things, what we had today is the same thing, right?
A little bit, but it's complicated. It's complicated by how the studio system works. It's complicated by how many movies are made per year. There used to be filmmakers would make more movies, studios would make more movies, so there was an ability to sort of move through that. And we also have to remember that as movies change, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are getting better. There isn't an evolution
I agree.
towards better. There are changes to what will suit the economics of the situation. We can look at shortly after Jaws, the introduction of VHS, and it took a while to catch on, but by the time we had the explosion of VHS and home rentals in the 80s, then we had a shift in Hollywood filmmaking, and we had a shift towards a close-up, for example, and probably a shift away from complicated blocking because people were watching on televisions. And not only that, they were watching on
for the
square
middle of the
televisions.
Yeah.
They were watching on 4:3 televisions, not in widescreen. So a lot of the times when style or other things change, they change for reasons that are not necessarily because filmmakers are better or filmmakers are worse or audiences appreciate this or that. Sometimes they change because of just introductions of technology or how and where people watch movies.
IMAX has changed things. I mean, like,
yeah,
I said IMAX has changed things just in terms of how filmmakers frame stuff, because now they do both IMAX framing and like widescreen or whatever it's going to be. And that thing also hurts movies.
You're right. I agree. I can totally see that.
It's also international politics affect movies too in a lot of ways, and
yeah, totally. I just think about
and
the parts of filmmaking that, like the fact that we use 24 frames per second, and no one really knows exactly why that's the magic one. It just is, right? It's just the one that works the best to give you that dream-like, surreal, like I'm not here but I'm here. Like it kind of came about. And even we've seen filmmakers experiment with higher, and no one likes it because it doesn't work. And so I just think about that in terms of like, well, that was just kind of this like happy accident almost, of just like we figured this out because it just was working, and then everyone liked it. And I know we're kind of in a feedback loop, right? Of you've grown up with that now, and so that's now what you expect from movies. But I just wonder, it's interesting to look at the modern way we tell stories and try to parse, okay, what of this is politics? What if this is the current social climate? What if this is technical changes to like technology? And then what if this is the continued refinement of what connects audiences to stories? Because there is some of that there. I agree, we've lost some things, but some things have changed for the better. We have gotten, I think, better at communicating stories, better at putting you in the perspective of a character or helping you empathize with the character on screen. I think we're a little better at that than we used to be.
Yeah, I think.
And so I just think it's just, I'm not, this is not me trying to say modern movies are better than old movies or old movies are better than, it's an interesting thing to look at and try to parse.
Yeah.
Look at Superman. Superman. We talked a little bit after the movie. Of course, we did a podcast on it, Bruce, but we didn't really talk about it in depth or anything. There's a lot of things I like about Superman that are fun, and just for the sake of being Superman, I like that character, and I just things like that. But the filmmaking is absolutely atrocious for that movie.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of things about it, and I've seen it 3 times in theaters, but it's atrocious. And like there's and I like, hey James, call me, but it's just like, I don't know. And like I think the movie, it's made like $500 million right now. It'll probably cap about 600 million. Obviously, there's potential politics, with like China and all these other things. But I really think it's just down to if they had taken the care and time beforehand and made a movie. Again, I'm not advocating for every film to be Spielberg. That would be lame, and I don't want that. I'm
But
just
come
saying,
on, man.
like
Like
there should be
you
care in the framing and the shots, and that's gonna make it's like that's the art of movies. It is the editing and the. I mean, like,
I just don't
are we
think that
communicating
that's
better
why
stories? Yeah, but you
Man
can
of
read a
Steel
book.
makes more money. Like I hear
I
I
think
think
100%
Superman is
it
having
would
to
make
deal with
more
all the
money. It's not. It's not
maybe
just
marginally. I don't know, maybe marginally. I
no.
just think I think
No,
You
no,
have
you're
to remember how
insane.
much the movie cost to make.
You're insane if you think that the movie being better on all fronts is not going
no,
to
I'm
help the
not saying that.
box
I'm just saying
office.
if it had great cinematography but everything else was the same, I don't think it's going to make more money. Personally,
You're
like
insane.
I
You're
just
wrong.
don't think that that is why audiences come to Superman is good cinematography. The reason this movie is working is because
It's
people are seeing it over and over again.
it's not
And
working as
the
no, it's not
politics is
working
the
like it.
politics is that DC sucked for 10 years before this and no one had any interest in these characters and it's having to fight that. And
I
that
get it.
Marvel burnt
I
everybody
know
out on
that.
superhero movies. So what I'm just saying, you weren't
I
acknowledging that in your argument. You're just saying this
I
movie would have made
no.
more money. Well, it could have made more money in a dozen different ways, but I don't personally, I don't think if Chris, like if it
I
was
didn't say
perfectly
just the
shot or,
cinematography. I
well, I
said
did.
all the other. I know you did. I said all the other aspects of the filmmaking process, the editing, the score, the cinematography, the blocking, all those
Well,
things that make up a movie that we're talking about
yeah.
with Jaws. It would have made more money if those things fired on better cylinders. That's just a fact.
Well,
There's no ver. You can't tell me
sure.
we made a dollar more. That's more money.
No,
I mean, like,
I agree. If the movie was just better, more people
It
would
would be
probably see
so
it.
better.
then what the hell are we arguing about?
I
I mean,
guess well, you were just saying
I
the
understand. I understand the
filmmaking is
politics
atrocious. I guess,
of
like to me, when I hear that, I think of like, I mean, I get,
compare.
yeah. I
I
guess
mean,
I'm just associating that more with the technical aspects of filmmaking than like the narrative aspects, because I think that's a lot of what we talk about when we're talking
well,
about these old movies.
Yeah.
So
But
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't think I'm
it's
wrong.
look, it's complicated, right? Because I mean, when you look at a movie like Superman now, I mean, so much of, I mean, how much of that was actually shot on a location? You know, most of it is shot in a green screen studio where there are no, I mean, like the prop is like
yeah,
a table, you know, and it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, that's Lex Luthor's, you know, command center on his ship or whatever, and it's just a block, and we're gonna make all of that digitally. First of all, that's incredibly hard to do in terms of like really visualizing, even with the new technology of how you're going to do that, and to be able to use those tools in a way to create what Spielberg did, I think is really hard to like figuring out like really complex, compelling blocking when all you've got is a green screen or an empty studio and some people, and that's what you're working with, and you're not on a location, you're not connected to the space, and you can't really think through all of that. And a lot of that is the change in priority of Hollywood, you know, of what Hollywood thinks people want, you know, and that's 20 years of Marvel movies and superhero movies, and you know, we blame we blame Marvel. It's easy to blame Marvel or Disney and Marvel for all of that, but we can even go back a little further and blame the growth of visual effects and
blame Star Wars,
computer graphics,
Lucas,
right?
George Lucas. It was his
And
fault.
We can blame Spielberg for Jurassic Park. Yeah.
yeah, and you can even say, okay, well, if this technology developed, people were like, what can we do with this technology? And
I
certain
get
kind
it.
of stories grew out of that technology. We can make people fly, we can make dinosaurs, we can do all of this kind of stuff. And so now we're making those kinds of things instead of making Jaws, you know. And so there's just so many pieces of the puzzle, right, that sort of fit into kind of what drives those decisions and where the budget goes and then what that means for the success of a movie. I mean, I agree with you in the end, Donovan. The result is that we get movies that in some ways, because they're concerned with one set of concerns, are no longer concerned with another set of concerns. And I think that can hurt a lot of movies. You know, they potentially are not as good. Having said that, it doesn't mean, I mean, I'm not trying to split hairs or like, you know, sit on the fence here, but Daniel's also right. I mean, we've learned certain things, and especially about storytelling. I think that stories now are more complex than most of the classical Hollywood movies up through the 70s. I mean, they were relatively simplistic. Acting has gotten better. I mean, we had great movie stars, but acting is more gritty, it's more realistic. I think characters are generally more well-rounded. We understand structure a little bit better, even though this is something I push all the time. I think a lot of screenwriters understand it at an intuitive level, but they don't really know what they're doing. They write they copy what they've seen, but they can't explain it. But I do think we see improvements in those areas, and when you're lucky, if all of those things come together with the right director and the right story and the right use of technology, you get something like a Mad Max Fury Road, which I think when we get to 2100 will be voted one of the best action movies of the past 100 years. I mean, so we still have that, but yeah, I mean, there's so many complicated things that factor into it all.
I agree with you, Daniel.
I also agree with you, Donovan.
Oh, cool.
We actually call each other every
together.
night and
Thank
say
you,
that to
Bruce.
each other. We call each other every night and just say that before bed. Hey, Donovan, I agree with you. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you
And
too.
good
And we say
night,
good night, and
and-
then yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys watched B99?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
One of
you
my
were
all-time favorite.
you were doing a cool, right, like B99. I was like, what's that?
Yeah,
Brooklyn
the
Nine. Gotcha.
fan-
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I love
one of
that
my
show.
all-time favorites. Chrissy and I have just finished once again rewatching that, and
So
of course,
good.
it's reminded me of the Boyle family.
Oh yeah.
I love you, Daniel. I love you, Donovan.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great show. I love that show.
It's really good.
R.I.P.
I never
Andre
saw the
Braugher.
last
All right.
season. Yeah. This has been a long anniversary episode here.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that we all three really enjoyed Jaws, and if you haven't checked it out, you probably should. And yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure talking to you guys about these kind of old school movies, and maybe we can do a newer one, next time. And
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I think it's a
Yeah.
great movie, and it'd be cool to see like a newer Spielberg movie. He's got one coming out next year. It's like his next sci-fi kind of alien inspired one. And it's fun to compare filmmakers from when they started to where they are now. I've been on this Tarantino kick lately for some reason, and maybe that's one we could do also, a Tarantino film.
I don't think we've ever done a Tarantino, so yeah, that's
I
probably
don't think
a
so.
good one to put on
I
there.
used to think he was overrated. When I first got UCA, I was like, he's overrated. I don't blah blah blah. And then I'm like, he's pretty damn good in a lot of places.
He was like the
so I like-
default director that the film kids know that you didn't
Yeah,
know. For,
exactly.
like the
Yeah.
early aughts. It was like,
Yeah.
but do you know Quentin Tarantino? Like that was that was the like test. Are you really into movies?
I really love Django Unchained. I think it's my favorite that he's done. And then Once Upon a Time is my second favorite, I think. But yeah, so anyway, before we go, we like to highlight one last thing that may or may not be film or TV related. Daniel?
Yeah, I'm gonna do these quick because I know we're running long. But my highlight is Poker Face, TV show on Peacock. It is created and somewhat produced by Ryan Johnson. If you like Knives Out, you should have already been watching this. It's fantastic. It feels like classic TV in like a Agatha Christie kind of way, in that you're not wondering who the murderer is, you're wondering how it's going to all play out. But the in that way, you would imagine that a murder show where you're not there's no mystery of like who did it, you'd think that would be uninteresting. It's incredibly done. Natasha Lyonne is amazing in it. The filmmaking is good. It just, I highly recommend Poker Face. We just finished season 1 last night. So
I started it and really liked it, and I need to go back
Very
to
good.
it. Daniel? Or sorry, Bruce?
Well, I will go to a movie since we've been debating the quality of contemporary movies. The summer movie that I saw this summer that really blew me away, that I think maybe isn't getting quite enough attention, is 28 Years Later. I think it is fantastic, and it is one of those movies that it's a horror movie because it's a zombie movie, but it really becomes a movie about death and grief, and does some really great things that I've never seen in a movie before.
at a technical level or like narratively?
Well, both. I mean, technically, it was shot entirely on iPhones.
No, I was going to bring that up. Like the picture from the on-set picture I keep seeing is this like half circle
with the
rig with
huge, like
30
100 iPhones on it,
which is like so the opposite of what we think about when we think of like careful story. Like that sounds like that reminds me of Thor: Love and Thunder, where there's 40 cameras shooting for coverage, right? But obviously, done with intention, it can really work.
Yeah, so technically it's really interesting because the first 28 days later was one of the very first really successful DV movies. Where I forget what the camera, but they basically were shooting on sort of the equivalent of digital handy cams, like the
Oh
kind of
wow.
stuff we would have had at UCA about that
Yeah.
time. Um,
T2Is.
Oh
yeah,
man.
and then they came, and did this with phones. But really, I think it's more about the storytelling, and I think one of the things that we get as we move through film history and we have more of film history to base on is ways that we can play with and experiment with genres that we
Hmm.
wouldn't have seen 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, where we have a more complicated view of genre. And so, what I really loved about this movie was just its storytelling and the way it kind of moves from a horror movie to a very sort of serious kind of thoughtfulness about death and grief and how you like literally process death. I don't mean like how you emotionally process it, but like what you do with bodies and stuff like that. I
Mm,
mean, it's
mm,
really interesting.
mm.
And Ray Fiennes is fantastic in it, and he does sort of this reverse um, um, Marlon Brando Apocalypse Now kind of performance. I mean, he clearly is referencing that, but he, rather than being this crazy evil character, he's a much different kind of character. He's almost the reverse, but he looks almost the same. And
Mm.
I just thought it was great. And I haven't heard a, I mean, I may be singular in that, but I haven't heard as many people talking up that movie as I would like because I thought it was fantastic.
The only thing I see and hear about it is positive things. So
Yeah.
it's definitely there. It's just not as loud as a lot
Yeah.
of the other stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I
I've
highly
never
recommend it.
I've
Highly
never
recommend it.
seen 28 Days Later. I need to start the series.
I certainly recommend the other two. 28 Weeks Later is probably the weak link. 28 Days Later is very good. 28 Weeks Later is decent, but wasn't directed by Danny Boyle.
Well,
Danny Boyle
that'll do
comes
it.
back for 28 years later, and it's just now come on to VOD. It's still in the $20, $25 price range for rental and purchase, but in a few more weeks it'll be affordable, and I highly recommend people look at it if they haven't been able to catch it on the big screen.
Is it already confirmed to have a sequel?
Two more.
Two
One's already
more.
been shot.
Oh wow.
They shot three and four back to back.
Oh wow, I did not
Wow.
know that. I mean, I
What are the
knew that
names of
there was
those going to be? How can they go up 28 another 28
It's like it's called
decades?
28 Years Later. They've already got they're
Oh.
subtitled. They already got the
Oh,
names for
okay,
them.
okay, okay.
okay.
One's like the Bone something is the next one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
this one ends clearly on a cliffhanger. I mean, even though
Oh,
it
okay.
does wrap up, there is a cliffhanger that clearly sets up that there's another movie coming. I also should point out, as a fan of Danny Boyle, that I've been hearing things about a sequel to Sunshine,
Mm.
which
Ooh.
is a fantastic, one of my
Yes.
all-time favorites, sort of, especially science fiction horror movies.
So good.
It is right up in my top 10, top 15. I love Sunshine, so.
It's so funny because I see a lot of people criticize the final act of that because it kind of goes from like an existential horror to like a monster movie.
Yeah,
It just works for me though. I don't know. Like
that
I
worked for
just
me
I
too.
don't complain. I'm just like I mean I see what you're saying. I know what you I see it, but I don't care when I'm watching it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, our before we go about 3 or 4 weeks ago was 28 days later, and Daniel mentioned Sunshine during that
Okay.
podcast,
Well,
and it was
I
the first.
love that's my favorite Danny Boyle movie, and I love Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
the first time I'd ever seen 28 Days Later just a few weeks ago because the new one was coming out.
Yeah.
And I was honestly, I don't know why I stayed away from it, but I was kind of blown away by it. Just about like this really dark subject matter, but it has such a hopeful quality to it. And it was so different than and like the way he was doing filmmaking, I was just like, I was blown away by it. I'm halfway through 28 weeks later. I just
Okay.
got sidetracked and I like it too, but of course I agree. It's so far it's not as good as the first one, but
Yeah.
I loved. I've been dying to watch 28 years later. And it came out on digital, like you said, this week. So I'm going to finish weeks this weekend.
We should do a
Um,
Danny Boyle at some point. Do you want to? I
we
mean,
should.
Yeah.
you've never seen
I've
Sunshine?
never seen Sunshine. Yeah.
Sunshine is
So
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah,
Another
I'll put it on
Cillian
the
Murphy
list.
banger.
Yeah. So what's
I
your
like
thing,
it.
Donovan?
I haven't really talked about it on the podcast at all, but since our episode 250, I will. But I run another YouTube channel called The Guyver Geek. It's youtube.com/ at The Guyver Geek. I've kind of compiled everything Guyver from the animes to some of the live action stuff, all the way on that channel. And so you can go in there and you can look at collectibles on there. You can watch all the episodes. It's from kind of like a Japanese superhero manga from the 1980s. And of course, we had a live action film in America in 1991 with Mark Hamill. And of course, the sequel, Guyver Dark Hero, with David Hayter, who's the voice of Solid Snake. And he wrote X-Men and he wrote Watchmen as well. And so I've also have interviews with all these people on there, cast and crew. And then I haven't told anyone this yet, and no one on the Guyver community watches this. Oh, we also had a short film, Guyver Midnight, come out, and we shot it in LA last October. I was out there for a couple of days, and we shot that, and it's out now if you're into fan films. It's the first live action Guyver thing since 1994. But and no one knows this, but I just completed the restoration on Guyver Dark Hero for the upcoming Blu-ray. I've been working on that for about 4 or 5 months now, and I'm officially in the credits of Guyver Dark Hero, which is one of my
Wow.
favorite films of all time. And so I'm in there. So I mean, I redid the credits, I've remastered the movie. Again, 4 month long process. But if you're into Guyver, youtube.com/ at the Guyver Geek, and I'll put some links down in the description below.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Congratulations. Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see it out.
What is
I've
your
seen the
is
movie
it like
more
digital
than
restorationist, something like
digital
that?
remastering. Donavon Thompson. Yeah, so that's what it
Nice.
is.
That's
Yep,
awesome.
I'm in there. I'm in there. So anyway, thank you again, Bruce, for being on here. It's a long one. It's one of the longest ones we've
Yeah.
done. It's almost 3 hours long, but that's okay though. But it had to be for episode 250.
Right.
Real quick, how can our listeners find you, Bruce?
I'm at the Hutch Files, and you can get on there. It's my Substack website. I put down breakdowns. I'll put up this JAWS breakdown, and of course, I always have a link to the podcast as well. That's my main place. I'm also on Instagram at BD Hutch.
Cool. We'll make sure they're all in the description below. And of course, if you haven't, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast, youtube.com/ at Real Therapy Pod. And of course, on all podcast services, if you haven't, leave us a review. It really helps people finding us. I'm excited, Daniel, next week for our next episode. And we haven't 100% decided it, but we're back next week for episode 251. Bruce, as always, a pleasure having you on here. And I cannot wait to see what our next movie is.
Yeah, me neither. It's great to be here as always, and I'm always excited about what we have next on the agenda.
Perfect. My name is Donovan Thompson,
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And I'm Bruce Hutchinson.
and we'll see you at your next session.
Real Therapy is brought to you by 241 Studios and viewers like you. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. for a new session with Daniel and Donavon. And remember,
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch all the movie reels, 'cause it's Dan and